All right, we're coming to you live on a Wednesday morning. Happy Hump Day. Gary and Matt with you on 1620 The Zone. Streaming out there, the app out there, wherever you can get the show. Happy middle of the week. We got some big news that just happened.
Nothing better than your classic 5:55 a.m. Tom Pelissero NFL news dump.
Yeah, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the program and talk about the hardballers, there has been a trade in the NFL. The Cowboys are trading George Pickens to the Pittsburgh Steelers for draft picks. The Dallas Cowboys have a wide receiver. They're going to make you forget about Des Bryant, Jimmy.
And they're still going to finish 7-10.
Oh,
forever.
come on.
I mean, zero optimism. Meg knocked on my door. It was 6:10, about
That's
15
right.
minutes
She's a
ago.
Steelers fan, isn't she?
So she knocks on the door. I was in my own world, and I opened the door with the look on my face of disgust, like, what? And she goes, "Congratulations on George Pickens." I was like, what does it have to do with, what did I do? I didn't do anything. I deny everything. And then she told me that, and I was like, if I rooted for a team that was truly committed to winning, I'd be excited. But instead, I'm more excited about this coffee I got this morning. That's an absolute banger.
Come on.
So I will rely on you two to tell me why I should be excited, other than the fact it's going to be another beautiful day in the Big O today.
You got some pass catchers for Dak. Pittsburgh gets him off. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers was behind this. He said, I can't be throwing the ball to George Pickens. I've been working out all offseason with DK Metcalf. I can't be throwing to Pickens. I would like the backstory of this trade from when it was given to the insiders, because it is 7 a.m. on the East Coast, 6 a.m. here.
Yeah.
And this is coming out from all of the insiders that George Pickens is on his way to Dallas for draft picks.
So the first one on it was Bobby Belt, who is a local Cowboy reporter for 105.3 The Fan. And so he gets all the credit for breaking this about 45 minutes ago. I love it for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, we've seen that CeeDee Lamb and this Dallas Cowboy team have had
you should be optimistic.
The best amount of success when
I'm listening.
There is a secondary pass catcher next to CeeDee Lamb. And ever since Michael Gallup, he was a guy that was supposed to be their wide receiver too, and was on the edge of getting a really, really big extension, doesn't have a great contract here and now. I don't even know where Michael Gallup is currently playing. He might still be a Cowboy, but he definitely isn't effective enough to be that guy next to CD. From a Pittsburgh perspective, I'm a little confused just because this hasn't been new news by any chance that George Pickens wants an extension, and he didn't have his best season last year from a pass catching perspective and just from a off the field optic perspective. It seemed like every time we were talking about George Pickens, he was getting into a fight on the field, or there was something going on in the locker room. So for them to,
he's going to the perfect franchise.
Well, for the Steelers, though,
one year remaining. I mean, he's still on his rookie contract.
But for the Steelers, though, to trade him after the draft, and then they didn't even take any wide receivers, any other pass catchers in the draft that they had. It's just really confusing to me. And I think that they're probably, and this is just speculation, just from kind of the scenario of I wouldn't be surprised if there's more to the story that we're going to find out in the A block, that something maybe dramatic went down.
A problem on the roster.
But
there it is.
There's what we found out. He's been a problem on the roster.
The thing the Steelers do is, for all you Yinzers out there, is when they have a problem child, they move pretty quickly. Mike Tomlin, who is now the longest tenured head coach in professional sports in America.
My team takes problem
He does not mess with anybody. Le'Veon Bell, I don't care. Antonio Brown, I don't care. George Pickens, find a new home.
You just think
that's a pretty good front office. They also know they're also a good front office because they know when guys that have contributed a lot to Pittsburgh's success are at the end, and so they get rid of them before
they fall off.
And then it's that uncomfortable conversation about you used to be a star for us, and now Father Time has caught up to you.
I just think that you would have expected them to make this trade pre-draft, right? And that this has been the circumstances that have been laid out from George Pickens being a problem child have been there, and so I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a straw that broke the proverbial camel's back here in terms of maybe something. Yeah, I would think, because you would.
Wasn't there some chatter before?
There was.
Once they went into the offseason.
But once again, I'd be really surprised if the market shifted that much from the draft to the post-draft for the Cowboys being able to make this deal. I just think that as the Steelers, who I totally agree with you, are a really, really good front office
Winners
who make really smart decisions, would make this trade pre-draft so they could then fill some holes here at wide receiver with those draft picks.
Do you think they would, because there were draft picks, that they're like, we don't need draft picks in 25, because if you're doing this, you're probably grabbing draft picks in 25. Let's take it for 26 in the future.
No, I wouldn't expect that, because if the plan is to have Aaron Rodgers eventually come into your franchise, Aaron Rodgers isn't the long-term answer. I don't, at least.
But you're not getting a first rounder.
I don't
know. They haven't announced what they're.
I don't think they would want. I don't think
third round pick and then a late round pick swap. So I think this was something.
But I don't think
post draft where you go, you know what? We couldn't get together before the draft and maybe couldn't decide on 25 picks. Like maybe the Cowboys didn't want to give up their third round pick in the 25 draft. Did they have one? I don't know if they had one or not.
Neither do I.
So then it's like your post draft.
But I think you would want for this season with Aaron Rodgers, with how old he is, with it's probably going to be a 1, maybe 2 year deal with Rodgers in Pittsburgh, that you would want to get as much talent into your building as possible. I think that with this trade, when you're trading a guy who was your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, it depends on your opinions on him and DK Metcalf. The Steelers, got worse from a just talent perspective.
Now, to be fair, Jerry thinks they traded for Carl Pickens, but now I'll happily take George.
This could be a
Carl
Buffalo Bills Stephon Diggs situation where it kind of is a addition by subtraction, right? If you get rid of a guy that maybe you don't like in your locker room, that your team does get better despite the fact that you're losing talent. But I just think from the fact that this has been a situation that you could have seen coming all the way back to like February, for them to do a post draft is really interesting and something that I didn't expect. But I mean, I think the Cowboys definitely get a lot better with this trade.
All right, you're just the sports that just continues. Yeah, you'd be happy.
It's a good trade. It's a really good
tough
trade.
division. You're in a tough division. You're all fine.
You gave up a third round pick for a wide receiver 1 type guy. It's more high end wide receiver.
I'm trusting
2.
you guys. I'm gonna have faith.
Will he be able to wear number 14 with the Cowboys?
If he asks nicely.
I don't know. People are upset about numbers and all of that. The sports with a banger of to start the morning with a trade in the NFL, which you don't get a lot of trades in the NFL. You also have the sports were on fire last night, depending on who you rooted for, where you live, what sport you like. So, we had a big ball celebration. Anytime you have a big ball celebration.
Relatable. Someone who grew up in South Texas where the humidity is really high and it gets hot.
Tyrese Halliburton, man.
Yeah.
He's got some receipts as he hit the big shot. Big caller last night to beat Cleveland to go up 2-0 in that series. All I could think of, what if his dad was at the game? What would John Halliburton be doing if he was at the game in Cleveland last night?
He would have
when
2
his
towels.
Son rallied almost single-handedly for the Pacers to beat the Cavs and put the Pacers up 2-0 going home. So the sports were great, unless you were in Lincoln last night for the GBR Hard Ballers, who another frustrating night in a frustrating season. That some are depressed, some are ready for the season to be over, maybe even including the head coach. But last night, Nebraska falls to Creighton 8-7. The game does matter. I know there were some people that were couching like, it doesn't matter. If they lose, they can say, you know what, I told you it didn't matter. The game matters on both sides. Nebraska's RPI fell to 71, so thank you. You can just stop with one thing that is aggravated me is this at-large talk.
Yeah, I know.
Just stop. Nebraska's at 71. Creighton moved up to 57.
Yeah.
They do play Xavier this weekend. Both Nebraska and Creighton play teams in the conference weekend that are above them in the RPI. But last night, another frustrating night.
Yeah.
Nebraska puts themselves in a 6-0 hole with self-inflicted wounds, bad pitching, walks,
errors,
bad base running again. But then
advantage of opportunities.
And then a raucous rally late that in the world of Nebraska baseball that makes no sense this year, or maybe it does make sense. They have this rally where they score 5 runs in the last 3 innings. They have runners on the corners. They have 1 out. Well, then they have 2 outs, and you have Gabe Swanson at the plate. And all you can think about, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
This isn't going to make sense that Nebraska is going to win this game, but they're going to find a way to win this game because Gabe is at the plate, and we're in the month of May. But what happens? Back-to-back strikeouts. Nebraska strands 2, and it is another loss in a very, very frustrating year that includes, it seems like, every game, one inning where you go WTF, and that was the top of the fourth last night where they walked 3, had a play at the plate. They had a double play ball that they could have gotten out of the inning, a wide throw. The inning continues. A guy who was, I think, Ben North, I heard he was 6 of his last 40 or something, comes through with a big base hit, has 3 hits last night, and that's the season for Nebraska. They're 24-25, and you can't quit them, I guess.
That is the season. That game was the perfect description of what the season has been, because it was an entertaining game, and they had some big moments, right, from the pitching staff getting out of jams and whatnot. But then 9 walks, right? You get caught out on the base paths. You have a perfect double play right back to the pitcher who throws it wide, and you end up scoring runs, and it ends up being a long inning, and then somehow, some way, they find themselves crawling back into the game with 2 solo shots from Overbeek and Gabe Swanson, and then they rally at the end, and you're sitting there like, all right, bases loaded, no outs, here we go, they're going to win this game, they're going to do it, what a great rally, this is going to propel them into the weekend, and then they don't take advantage of runners in scoring position. They don't take advantage of those opportunities. And we've seen games like this before, in particularly the last Kansas State game, where they did have that, that big error and that blow-up inning, but they still were able to battle through it, rally, and then end up winning, right? This one, they couldn't. And credit to Kraton for holding on and taking advantage of those opportunities. And I'm not going to disparage Kraton and say that, they weren't great or anything like that, but this definitely was a Nebraska blew this game, and Nebraska self-sabotaged themselves, and they couldn't take advantage of the opportunity.
I think both teams last night played to their identity. I mean, Nebraska's been so up and down and inconsistent, and the one thing that has been consistent is Nebraska's done a really good job of being consistently inconsistent and running the bases. Nebraska's run themselves out of so many innings, or when a ball is in the dirt and you should be on second base, you're still standing on first base. Then Kraton, which, they go through the ups and downs, and they have a good ERA, like one of the best ERAs, but they have nobody that comes in and you go, okay, we're in trouble here. Mm-hmm. They find ways to win. And watching that game last night, how it unfolded, and, it's 6-0. You get through. Will Walsh actually looked like Will Walsh in his brief start, and I think he's off the weekend now. I'm pleased for Ed's service. So last night, Kraton wins the season series, and they have owned the series against Nebraska. And I don't care how they celebrate. It's a rivalry. If you win, you can do thumbs down. Mm-hmm. I don't know if is that a Kraton thing or towards Nebraska, because they took a picture. Nebraska did the same thing when they won at the Downtown Day Trader a couple of weeks ago. Kraton takes a picture on the field, and all the guys are doing thumbs down. Is that and then what's his name at the end of when he struck out Swanson did the thumbs down to the Nebraska dugout. Hey, you win, you can celebrate. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a. Does that all the time, or is that a Nebraska thing against Nebraska?
I was looking for it on Twitter. I couldn't find anything to indicate one or the other that it was a shot at Nebraska or it's something that they've done all year.
But I'm pleased for Ed's service from this standpoint. Ed is a good man. He's a really, really good baseball man that has put that uniform on for 22 years. And as I've watched him this year, he's gotten to spend more time with his family, and you mentioned they're having a big weekend this weekend for it's the last time he will be in the dugout as the head coach at that stadium for Kraton.
Yeah.
But he's been able to enjoy it, and, former players are coming back.
They are.
And I'm pleased for him because this is not the way he wanted to go out. He was basically forced into coach in waiting. Mm-hmm. This is it for you. Mm-hmm. Thought you were going to get fired a couple of years ago. They've had a really solid year where they may win a regular season title in the Big East. I don't know if that gets them into the NCAA tournament. Doubtful. But they have a chance to go to Ohio and get to the NCAA tournament, which they haven't been to very much here in the last decade. But to do that in his last year, I'm happy for Ed. And the other thing that is so interesting about the Kraton baseball season, that they're now 32-13.
Yeah.
And they have a nice roster. I mean, I've liked their lineup from day one. 1 through 9, they all have different elements. They're really good at picking it. I mean, Will McLean makes a nice catch in the stands on a pop-up. Ben North has been good defensively. They're well put together.
Yeah.
But they don't have like any like superstars, but they have, like Nolan Sailors from Ralston is hitting over 400. But here's the thing: is the season has unfolded, and the awkwardness of the coach in waiting. Like Creighton men's basketball, that's not awkward. That's not awkward.
That's happy
because the head coach said, "I'm ready to go.
Yeah,
I'm picking my guy that I'm comfortable with." Ed didn't have that luxury, but you haven't heard Mark Kingston's name all year. Yeah. Mark Kingston is there, and I'm very intrigued to see what it looks like.
Sure,
because he's got a pretty good resume, but you haven't heard his name at all. He didn't really talk to the media, and this has been Ed's year the way it should be. So I'm happy for him because I'm a big Ed Service fan. But winning that, I'm sure that bus ride home last night, there was a little extra kick because it's Nebraska. And what I say yesterday, when Nebraska understands that Omaha and Creighton beating you is a huge deal, you'll get it. And you saw last night for Creighton, whether it be the radio guys or the players on the field or the coaches, it was a big deal.
Look, there's a lot of in-state players.
We'll get to that.
There's a lot of in-state players on Creighton baseball, and I don't think you have to tell those guys who are in-state how big of a deal the Nebraska game is, right? We kind of talked about it yesterday. There's those embedded rivalries through high school and growing up, knowing the Huskers and whatnot. But the out-of-state guys who are on Kraton, they care about the Nebraska rivalry mainly through Coach Ed Service, because Coach Service, he embeds that, hey, this game matters. This is more than just a big game. And I think yesterday, I know that maybe some people could have been like, when Robbie Bowling got tagged out and the infielder was staring him down, that was a little bit too
good.
much.
It's rivalry, man.
And the taking off of the gear and leaving it when you thought you got hit by a pitch, now you got to walk back and you got to put all the gear back on. People might be annoyed by that. I love it. And I think and if I'm being honest with you, as someone who went to Nebraska, I want Nebraska to kind of do that. I want Nebraska to tag the guy and stare him down. I want Nebraska to be chirping a little bit. I want Nebraska to show that attitude.
They were chirping out of the dugout last night,
and you could hear it too on the crowd microphone on the radio. Like I love that. I love the chippiness. I love the attitude, and I think that Creighton has won 13 of the last 16 games, and it seems like they are the ones that take this rivalry a little bit more personally, in my opinion. And I think that just goes to show. And these also, too, if you go through, kind of the recent history, a lot of these games, they've been close games. They've been really competitive games. Yeah. They've come down to the last couple hits and last couple pitches. And you need that edge to just push you a little bit up above them. Creighton had it yesterday, and it was a hell of the last two strikeouts to end that game. So,
all right. We'll have more on what happened last night because it's more about Nebraska and the season they've had that are now 24-25. They go into the weekend against Michigan. Don't tell me that people don't care or have quit because there were 5,800 there last night on a beautiful night for baseball. So we will discuss the depression that is Nebraska baseball, or you're furious, or the reaction. But sports are completely upside down if you're following the playoffs. If you're following the NHL, if you're on the road, if you're underdogs. I think I've learned a couple of things, especially about the NBA, is Steph Curry is hurt. And Golden State won a basketball game. We always say a 2-goal lead in hockey is the toughest to protect.
Yeah.
A 20-point second-half lead is the toughest to protect in all of basketball.
Well, another 2-goal lead was blown yesterday with the Vegas Golden Knights and the Edmonton Oilers, where, let me tell you something right now, Vegas jumped on Edmonton right away in that first period. You blinked, it was 2-0. And then Edmonton, credit to them in the third period, battling back. But I've never seen in the NBA in these last couple of games these absolute meltdowns from multiple teams across multiple states and multiple conferences. It's where, NBA players are great ball handlers. They practice these things every day. They know how to inbound the ball. Most of them are really, really, really good at free throw shooting, especially the ones who were put in those positions at the end of the game. The fact that we are seeing over the last couple of days these absolute just meltdowns, and then the other team has been able to make these shots when, Tyrese Halliburton didn't have a really good game leading up to those last couple of shots that he made in order for them to win. And I think it's exactly what the NBA needs in terms of a playoff product. They need a product a little bit that is closer toward the NCAA, that's closer toward the madness, right? Because you need that kind of spark and that excitement, because 7-game series are long. These things go over a couple of weeks. And when you have these crazy on a dime results being flipped. It gets you excited for the next game. It gets you more invested for what can happen. And also, too, all these games that we're going to be watching, even when a team is up 20 in the third quarter, we're going to be saying, hey, look out. Look out. You never know. I mean, it's been incredible.
Also, home court is not what it used to be. Two teams last night on the road. Golden State won, and also Indiana. Indiana's up 2-0 in the series.
Has a home team even won in the semis now? No, that's crazy.
No.
That is wild.
No. It's the sports are on absolute fire, as they say in the biz. All right, coming up on the show a little bit later, John Walker will join us from the Omaha World Herald. We'll talk a little Creighton basketball. We'll go into some legalese about the fedor. If you were a lawyer, would you take the case? Also, some other things that John gleaned from the Alan Huss, Greg McDermott press conference the other day. And also, Brandon Vogel stops by, smack dab into the middle of the off-season. Lists are out there, and you know who I've not seen a list from. You're a list guy?
I love lists.
Do we need to check on the health of Big Game Boomer?
Oh,
the Big Game Boomer list, I have not seen one in a long time.
Now, I think Big Ten Huddle, that's an account that I follow on Twitter. They are all into the list right now. I feel like they've been taking the list kind of genre away from Big Game Boomer as of late. I give a little respect to Boomer. I like some of Boomer's lists. I think that like there's some of these lists that definitely are like bait, that they're made to like make you mad and like made to get engagement, and that type of stuff works. But I do think that Big Game Boomer is actually a pretty good. I know like people joke about him on Twitter. I think he's actually a pretty good like college football mind, in my opinion.
Bring Big Game Boomer up. Let's see the last time that he tweeted, because I'm looking for a list.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's taking a break, because he is. I'm going to be seriously.
No, college football does not take a break. It's 24/7, 365.
That guy is all.
We can't get enough college football
feed during the. So he's not making a list, but he's commenting on lists. So he's finding lists that are occurring and then quote tweeting them and giving his opinion. I think he's just sick and tired of making graphics. I think that's where we're at this point. Graphic making is tough.
Except if you work at On3. All right, that's the lineup brought to you by the
I think it's pretty easy for them, actually.
Roofery's at John Higgins Weather Guard. Off and running on a Wednesday. We'll talk some baseball. Talk some football. We'll talk about Clemson and Notre Dame, a 12-year scheduling rivalry. And if you think it's good to go back to the Big 12, I got about 900 million reasons no. Also, did you know that the Big 10 could supplement 134 FBS programs and 1,850 student athletes very happily with the announcement yesterday of the revenue for this past reporting period? We'll get into all that as we roll till 10 on a Wednesday. It's Gary and Matt with Jimmy, 1620 The Zone. So we joke about Levante David from this standpoint is he's underrated. People that know and watch football and are football knowers know that he is one of the best linebackers that has played at Nebraska and in the NFL for the last 15 years. I saw he is doing an interview with Gruden. Like Gruden sat down with him, but guess what is in the title?
What's
one of the most underrated linebackers. At some point, does Levante David lose the underrated label if he goes into Canton?
Sometimes I think that the underrated label can cause a guy to be like overrated, if you know what I mean, because all we talk about is how underrated they are. Oh my God, they're so underrated. They're so underrated. Then they become really, really popular for being underrated. And then you're like, as soon as Levante David falls off, right? Because that's what happens. Like you get older.
I don't know if Father Time's going to catch up with him.
Father Time's undefeated, and it will happen at some point. And do you know what we'll say? We'll go, he's overrated. You know, he's not all that. People are always freaking out about Levante David, about how great he is. He's not that good. So it's funny. He, like you said, if you've been following the sport, if you've been watching, just football in general, and the NFL does a great job of making sure you see all the teams throughout the entirety of the year. If you're a fan of it, he has been the pillar of not only just great linebacker play, but great consistency. I mean, think of all of the top linebackers that we think of over the last decade. A lot of them are no longer in the NFL, right? Levante David's still here. Levante David's still kicking. Levante David is still an impactful player for a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that I think is going to be pretty feisty this year. I think that last year they were okay. They were good, but I really like what they're building over there. And I think that in that division that is still pretty decently wide open at this point, that once again, that they can compete for the top of that title.
Yeah, I don't think anybody around here thinks he's underrated.
No,
I think he is rated appropriately by his peers that know. All you do is watch the reaction when he was in Lincoln a couple of weeks ago. All right, it is on this Wednesday. It is National Roast Leg of Lamb Day. Brought to you by Matt Coatney.
Absolutely. We do
my first thought when I woke up this morning
during the football season. My dad and I about 3 to 4 times a year would do a roast leg of lamb. We would go to the Greek deli. We'd go there, get a roast leg. There's nothing better than lamb sandwiches on a Sunday football game.
Get some I've never had lamb once in my lifetime.
What?
Yeah, it was not a staple of my household growing up. And
shout out Sherry Lewis.
I'm not searching out.
Like lamb's great.
A lamb sandwich.
Do you like Greek food? Are you not a big Greek food guy?
I like Greek food.
Okay. But just not.
Shout out Giannis.
Just not lamb.
No, I'm not going to the Greek aisles and sitting down and go, you know what, I'll take a rack of lamb.
Is Giannis the first Greek person we think about when we think of Greek people?
That or Socrates.
Yeah, I was about to say, with all the incredible
So interesting, those two together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's just an insult to
most Abbott Spurs fans.
Most likely to get traded.
Could be 50-50.
Yeah.
Socrates could play a 5, but he's kind of slow on feet.
I don't know. Is the Roman Empire willing to give up a couple of draft picks in order to get Socrates?
Yeah.
That's the question. I don't know history, man. I can't really make adjacent jokes like that. I'm just saying.
You're not going to talk about the Byzantine Empire.
I feel like it's an insult to history if when we think of Greece, the first thing we think about is Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Why? He's a freak and he's Greek.
Yeah, but he's just a basketball player. And
there's
a lot of incredible things that happened in
watch your Spurs
ancient history that
me.
Has created our society that dawned in Greece.
Listen,
in Greece.
Greece is a place that is a beautiful country, seaside.
More
to
than
go
just
visit.
The word.
It looks good on your Instagram. But the best thing Greece has done for the U.S. is deliver us Giannis. Okay.
See?
I don't know. Euros are pretty damn good.
Here's the judging of how we look at Greece.
Yeah.
Is what's the tariff to Greece? Like are they a 10%er or are they like 100%er?
Look up right now.
That may be where they fall in how we look at Greece.
Right now, the maximum. I don't know. I have no clue. Now I'm on.
No, I'm here for
now.
this.
I'm on some European Union website trying to look up tariffs. I don't know. I would take euros over Giannis Antetokounmpo, as Jimmy Chavez would say. That's a 7-game series. But
over euros,
I would take euros over Giannis.
Oh, that's fair. And food is fair. I'm not gonna.
If I had to give up eating euros for the rest of my life, or give up watching Giannis Antetokounmpo play basketball for the rest of my life, I would give up.
Why do we always have to choose?
I'm just saying. I just feel like they're.
Why can't you eat a Euro while watching
in our ancient history that
at the Frostbank Center next year?
A guy who's put on 50 pounds since he got drafted because he's really long and athletic. I feel like we should have more than just that guy, Greece.
News this morning: the NFL a draft, a post-draft trade. The Steelers and the Cowboys. The Steelers trade George Pickens to Dallas for a third-round pick and other pick swaps. There you go. Your two wide receivers are CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, who had 59 catches for over 900 yards last year.
Don't ask me who's running the ball.
Only had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, Jaden Blue out of Texas.
Yay.
You picked him? Or no, is that? Yeah.
No, you're right.
Pick?
Yeah, that was
Pretty
my excitement.
It's okay. You're going to be a good offense. You're going to be a really, really good offense, and you still got Mike on the other end, and you were banged up last year in the secondary. If you get healthy, you're going to be fine.
I feel like I got 2 friends. It's going to be fine. You're going to be all right.
9-8 is going to look great on you.
Cardboard boxes have come a long way.
Schottenheimer's taken already. You guys can't have paper bags on your head. You guys don't qualify. As someone whose team does allow me to put a paper bag on my head during the middle of the year, I like to gatekeep that stuff.
We might have to see that.
You don't. I hope not.
You put a paper bag on your head before?
I thought that was a Saints thing.
In the middle of the year. In the middle of the year when, we're playing against the Lions in Thanksgiving and we have a timeout left with 45 seconds and we take a sack and then we don't call it.
You eat your feelings.
Paper bag time after that for sure.
That was pretty bad, though.
It was pretty. It got him fired.
Yeah.
You know what would be the combo of what you just said would be being a Chicago White Sox fan who, in my race to win my bet of their win total. No.
Oh, no.
Last night we had a game. The White Sox had a game. They were down at the K. They were going to win that game. They were in the 9th inning. Okay. There was no chance that Bobby Witt Jr. would pick up a bat and walk to the on-deck circle or let alone home plate. The White Sox were going to get out of the inning, and then they made even high school JV baseball teams look terrible with their defense. I actually think now the White Sox should fold after their embarrassing miscues last night, the train wreck that was the 9th inning, and Bobby Witt Jr. becomes the hero, and the Royals walk off the White Sox. With that said, so there were winners and losers last night, as there always are in sports. I was a winner yesterday.
Oh, congratulations. All right.
You ever stumble upon something where you reach into your pocket and you might find a $1 bill or 100 or...
Yes, that's happened twice to me.
You're a big baller over there. You carry a lot of cash.
I'm not. I currently have 0 cash on me right now.
Okay, you find something in the pocket?
Nothing better.
So today is Real ID Day across America. You may have heard about it because now everybody talks about it, that you have to have a real ID if you'd like to fly. It doesn't mean you won't be able to fly, but you might have to go through some other hoops. So I have been procrastinating.
Me too.
I have not done this.
Industry trade.
Neither have I.
Well, I also haven't, it's not till today, and I'm going to flex here. A lot of the travel I've done to begin 2025 has been private.
Yeah.
So you don't need the old real ID.
Just keep doing that.
So, yeah, it gets a little expensive.
Does it?
And also, I'm not on Omaha men's basketball dime until November.
Okay. Fair enough.
I smelled what you're cooking.
So I was like, okay,
easy solution.
I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be flying commercial. I got to make an appointment at DMV. So I was watching a news report yesterday, and they were showing, I think it was Channel 7. They were doing a report, and they showed the license. And so I was like, okay, pulled out my license.
Yeah.
I already have it.
No way.
Yeah. So
how did you not know?
I've never really looked at my license. I renewed it online.
Wait,
a couple
I
of
have
years,
it as well.
I renewed it online a couple of years ago.
Okay.
It came in the mail. I put it in my wallet. I don't stare at my
ID.
I know. I mean, I use it a lot, but I don't look at it.
Sure.
And yesterday I went to pull it out and I looked at it, and yes, I have the star in the corner, so I already have the real ID.
And you went about your day after that.
That was a winner. See right there?
How euphoric was that for you? Like,
I was just like,
that's got to be one of the best feelings, because I
high-five myself.
I can imagine you're sitting there thinking, man, these lines are going to be long. I don't know when I'm going to do it. I'm a really busy guy. I have all these different things. I don't want to wait. The DMV is always a pain in the butt. I'm sure you're freaking out about it, and then you look at it and you go, oh my God, I don't have to do this. I just want to, I'm not typically like the government defender, but like I'm not.
Is that something you're known for?
I'm not typically someone who stands up and goes, hey guys, they have it figured all out. Just trust them. But I do want to some people were kind of mad on Twitter that I do not have it. I do not have it.
But you still have, you never have gotten a Nebraska license?
No, I have to. So that's what I have to do.
Yeah, you have to do the whole.
Get the plates.
You have to do the plates and the license.
You better save up a few bucks.
I know. The thing is too, though, is that I have to. I got to get mail. I haven't been getting mail. I don't have like the proof of address. You know what I'm talking
Get a bill?
about? Like, don't you have to have a proof of address?
Take your roommate
with
you.
To get your ID, and you have to get mail through that.
Am I wrong
here?
That's how it was. How do you not have mail? You've been here a few months.
I just haven't really gotten mail.
I get crap for retirement homes all the time, and they look fantastic, by the way.
We get mail, like general mail, but I haven't really gotten mail like addressed to me, Matt McMaster, because I have to change my addresses on different things. That's what you have to do in Illinois. You have to have a proof of address through mail.
No, I don't remember when I switched from Florida to Nebraska. That might be the case.
I don't either. I just remember I was broke afterwards.
You have not gotten, since you've lived here 6 months, and you've not gotten a piece of mail.
There you go. Tracy says take your apartment lease.
4 months. And I have gotten like 2 pieces of mail, and one of them I threw away. So I have one. I just have not gotten a lot of mail. And I don't get a lot of mail because I don't have a credit card or anything like that. So I'm not getting that. I don't get
the family
bills.
pays your bills.
Nope, I pay my bills.
NFM still doesn't send you anything.
But it's all online. It's every single bit of it is online. I pay all of my bills are online. So anyway, regardless of that,
we need to get you some.
This has been the slowest rollout ever to get a real ID. When I got this ID,
it's been in place since 2005, but it keeps the deadline keeps getting pushed back and back and back.
2005,
really?
Yeah, 2005. Congress passed this. And
Nebraska was in the Big 12 back then,
and they pushed the deadline. They keep kicking it down the road, and all of a sudden they locked on to May 7th, 2025, and it hasn't changed.
I didn't know it was since 2005 because when I got this ID in 2023, they told me, hey, by the way, like I got this in May of 2023. They're like, hey, by the way, you are going to have to get a real ID at some point. Like this is something that has been on my radar for 2 years, and I have still not done it. And so I'm just saying, for the government's sake, that there are some people who are confused or like who are complaining that this is happening. You've had ample opportunity to get this done and to figure this out.
20 years. Damn. I forgot about that.
Well, it wasn't until it was last fall. Oh,
to be fair, 05's kind of fuzzy for me. If you know, you know.
Last fall, I was flying through Cleveland, and the person at the pre-check for TSA, and my license had it then.
Yeah.
He said, he was telling everybody, a reminder, Real ID is coming in 2025. And people were like, yeah, whatever. It's Sunday. I just want to get home. So I was pleasantly surprised. I will not be going to visit the Matt Coatneys of the world at the Nebraska DMV.
Congratulations.
So good luck to everybody out there.
Thank you.
But maybe it's a little bit better now because people that did not have it scrambled to get it before the deadline. Now the lines and the wait will be less for that particular thing you have to do. But you might as well take the day off because I think you're going to be there for a while. Mm-hmm. You might even have to take a driving test.
How long?
Content. We'll send a camera with
How
them.
long is this going to take me?
It depends on which one you go to.
Yeah.
What if I go to the slowest one?
We'll see next week.
You can be there for a while. You have to. That's the whole. You have to play the game because there's some places in this town that the DMV, they are lesser known, and if you go there, your wait's maybe max 30 minutes. But some places that are very popular, like the one on Cass, that seems like everybody goes to, because that's where you go the first time because that's all you hear about. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, the DMV on Cass.
There's one closer to me.
That one's going to take a little bit longer.
That's the one to go to.
So you got to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
You got to scout it out. It's almost like
you can check in online too.
Yeah, it's almost like what is the wait time?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you check in to go get your haircut at Great Clips, they give you what the wait time is. They should have that with the DMV.
Oh, that'd be great.
The Nebraska DMV should have an app that tells you how long your wait time is.
Like Beetlejuice,
and you can check in because like when I go to Great Clips, because Great Clips does a fabulous job with my lack of hair. It tells you, you check in and then it tells you what your wait time is. That would be. How come nobody's done that for the DMV?
That'd be great. There should just be a secretary at the DMV where you just call them, like the haircut place, and you go, "Hey, are you open? Hey, are you free?" What's it looking like?
Trust me, I've been there. I stand in line. They don't answer the phone. It just rings and rings and rings.
It's like ambient sound over there.
Yeah.
It's like white noise.
All right, when we come back, hour number 2 on a show this morning that'll include John Walker and Brandon Vogel. There is a tension convention in Minneapolis. I once went to a UFO convention in Minneapolis when I was in my teens. But now there's a real tension convention in Minneapolis after last night.
You went to a UFO convention?
Yeah, it was actually...
How cool was that?
It was very fascinating.
Yeah.
It was in the IDS Tower in downtown Minneapolis. It was interesting.
Like, was it big across like multiple rooms with a bunch of different models?
Yeah, we just kind of stumbled
like UFOs?
I didn't go to the Twin Cities for that. We just stumbled upon it.
I didn't. I thought this was like a passion of yours, and you.
I was like, that's why we had the Bigfoot lady on this show before.
But I am all in on the story that came out the other day that we actually own 10 UFOs that we have captured.
Yeah, you claimed that I was the conspiracy theorist guy on the show.
If you have, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. If you have proof. If you actually have a UFO.
Have you ever seen the video of like someone in the backyard and there's like a 7-foot figure standing back there and they're convinced that it's like an alien? I'm like, what if it's just like a D3 basketball player?
It was Theo Ratliff and his expiring contract.
There you go. It's the rights to Ricky Sanchez looking right at you.
It's Gary Matt on 1620 The Zone. Aren't you glad you don't have to watch the NBA until the last 5 minutes?
No, I don't think it's great for the game, but I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, that's just kind of what it's been, and this has been a trend for the last couple of years with the three-pointer.
When was the last time, and I will say this is two teams that I follow in the NBA, I probably have watched this year a full game from start to finish, maybe 5 to 7 times, that you watched an entire first half of an NBA game.
For me?
Yeah, I'm the wrong person
Did not at any moment switch away or get up and leave the room and come back. You've watched an entire first half of an NBA game.
No point. There's been 0 point. And there have been often times where I'm watching games in the third quarter, and I'm like, I know that this is just sparring until we get down to the last 4 minutes. Yeah. Like I know that. I mean, there are games that you're watching, you're like, they're really just playing at this point to have a 4-point lead with 4 minutes to go. And then at that point, then the game will get decided. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, unless there's a 30-point lead, you're just not out of it, because everybody plays 7 seconds or less and takes 43s a game. I mean, that's just
the Celtics take 60.
I mean, when everyone is just sprinting at full speed up and down the court, just chucking up shots, and you're not running like, long, elongated sets, like you're just going to score a ton of points and be able to come back.
Is the NFL the only sport in college football that you are going to watch from start to finish? Because I'm glad that I did not get to. I heard Pat and Ron on the radio, but did not have to watch on TV the 11th inning last night at Wrigley. But NFL and college football are the only two that you probably watch from start to finish, unless. And the NBA. So it used to be the last 2 minutes. Now it's gone to the last 5 minutes. But this is where the NHL comes into the conversation. Mm-hmm. Is the NHL it's so powerful with just the playoffs that more than likely you haven't watched, not you because you're a hockey fan.
Yeah.
You haven't watched more than 2 shifts all season. But once it gets to the playoffs, you switch up and it's can't miss and you watch it. Now, I'm not saying you watch the entire 60 minutes.
Sure.
But you probably watch it a little bit more. And again, last night, the NHL, the puck was on cocaine, and you got to see McJesus do his things.
Yeah.
But it's the power of the postseason and the sport where if you miss in basketball, you miss the first 43 minutes, you're like, I'm good.
Well, it's the power of points, right? Because you can score 20 points in like 3 minutes. Okay, we've seen that happen. Like you can see a team
Ant-Man can't
get super, super hot and be able to do that. It's much harder to do that. You can't score. It's really hard to score 20 points in the NFL in 3 minutes. It is literally impossible to score 20 goals in 3 minutes in the NHL. Like when you have when the points matter more. When the points matter more, right? You're a little bit more invested in the game, is my opinion, right? Like Look at yesterday's game. Carolina absolutely dominated. They had 33 shots on goal compared to the 14 that the Washington Capitals
had.
An
overrated stat, by the way.
Shots on goal?
Shots on goal.
When they're that lopsided, when it's 33 to 14, I would buy into it more. I would agree with you, though, if it's like 33 to 23. I don't think it's that indicative.
Well, I mean, Washington could have won that game and had 14 shots on net.
Oh, easily. Yeah. But that's the point. Right?
It's just a different sport. It's a read and react sport.
Exactly. You can the NHL, like you can dominate and play really, really well and be on the gas and you are dying. Like you are the best team, yet you may not win the game. In the NBA, if you're dominating and you are the best team like consistently, minute in, minute out, you're probably going to end up winning the game, which that's the thrill of hockey compared to the NBA. But when, I would rather watch, once again, it matters more in the second period in the NHL when you have competitive hockey than it does in the NBA, which is exactly why you're more likely to watch 3 periods of playoff hockey than 4 quarters of NBA play.
Somebody might have said the first half did matter last night for the T-Wolves, who only scored 31 points. Do they have a attention convention in Minneapolis? Because after the game and the Ant-Man forgot to show up last night, he only had 1 point at halftime.
They do. He'll have 40 tomorrow.
Started 0 for 10. They've been brutal from shooting the 3 ball the last 2 games.
Last 3, they're 23%.
The last 2, I saw that stat. They were 12 for 76. Weird game last night between Golden State and Minnesota that Golden State won with Curry leaving due to a hamstring injury. It's going to be okay. there'll be a bunch of WebMDers out there. They'll learn what the grade of a hamstring strain is. He'll be back in Game 6 when Golden State's down 3-2, so he can help as a legacy. But weird game last night. Both teams made 34 field goals. Golden State shot, 39.5%. I think Minnesota was at 39.1%. And Golden State won that game, kind of a little bit to what you were saying about the oddity of sports and how you can play well or not play well, and you might find yourself on the side of a win. But I liked what happened last night, that the Ant-Man got called out by his head coach. And when there was a reporter that asked him about the comments of his head coach, he went, I'm like, all right, here we go. This is why I love this series. Personalities, conflict, some controversy. And now we have a tension convention with the new face of the NBA, who will bounce back and go crazy and score 40. Doesn't mean the T-Wolves will win in Game 2, but that's how this works on the script.
Well, this is how this works in the NBA.
They win by
playoffs,
15 plus tomorrow.
Because yesterday we were talking about Anthony Edwards is on the path to being the face of the league, and then you lose one game and you make one comment at a presser, and then now we're thinking, well, is he really? And you lose one series against the Golden State Warriors, and you can make the argument, well, maybe he isn't the face of the league, which is like, I don't know. I've always gotten into this argument in my head, and I wonder what you think about it.
It's called schizophrenia.
With the NBA, and this is just, I have major schizophrenia then. So it's great that the NBA playoffs are awesome, and it's great that the NBA playoffs matter, and it's great that we talk about it a ton, and it gets a lot of attention, and it leads to storylines. But at the same time, I just think it just matters. We put so much stake into the playoffs that it just is a reflection of just how little the regular season matters. And we're talking about the fact that the NBA 6 months of the year does not matter compared to 2.5 months of the year where half of your teams aren't even in the field. They're not even being broadcasted. That is the main problem for this league.
So back to the face of the league or the face of sports.
Yeah.
Kids or adults determine who the face of your league is, or the face of your athletic department? Kids or adults?
Kids.
I'm with you.
Kids.
It's your future.
You want kids.
Well,
it's your future ticket buyers, your future donors.
So this is why
merchandise buyers.
This is why, Giannis or Jokic, I don't think can be the face of the NBA.
Because they
don't. Younger.
Because when you're a young kid and you're playing in the backyard, you are watching that player play more than likely in college.
Yeah.
You are buying their shoe. You are imitating them.
Yeah.
If you are an international player. Now, Giannis and Jokic are keys in being the faces of the league.
Sure.
But in terms of the true face of the league, you don't see them playing college here.
No.
Okay, you don't get to watch them play a 1 year in college where your dad or mom are talking about them, your buddies are talking about them, and I'm not saying kids like 6 to 7 year olds.
Yeah.
I'm talking like teenage kids who are buying the gear, who are buying the shoes, who are watching the games, who are out on the basketball court imitating whatever their move is.
Yeah.
And I think that determines who the face of your league or sport is. And then look at college. Look at the amount of young people, and we use this example in this state because of volleyball, like Harper Murray, Andy Jackson, the past great players, Lexi Rodriguez, and before her, Jordan Larson, of where the young boys and girls are, they know them, they see them, they talk about them, they buy their jersey, they go and stand in line and get their autograph. So Ant-Man with a shoe. Now, nobody watched him play at Georgia. Let's be honest.
No.
Okay, you didn't watch him play at Georgia. You probably don't even know he played at Georgia for Tom Crean. But he's a young player who is out there, who has posters of dunks that people are imitating what he's doing. That's why Steph Curry has been the face of the league, because kids are attracted to Steph Curry. Maybe not so much LeBron, even though LeBron has a case, because LeBron's a larger man that does those things.
Exactly.
That's why Aaron Judge, Aaron Judge could be the face of Major League Baseball, but I think kids relate more to the Currys and the smaller, the Ellie De La Cruzes than they do to these gigantic human beings that have athleticism, and you go, oh my God, that's Paul Bunyan doing those things where it's either LeBron or Aaron Judge.
You are spot on, and your last point is perfect, and what I believe for a while, because in my opinion, the two most popular, and they're not the best players, but the two most popular players in NBA history are Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Okay, those are the two guys who you have a rabid fan base that to this day defend their honor, defend how they played the game, that they might think things about them that are incorrect and you can't convince them otherwise because they love them. Those guys are 6'5" guards, right? 6'6" guards. They do things in the mid-range where you look and you're like, oh my God, that's cool. I could do that. I could do the turnaround fadeaway jumper. I could do the shimmy, back to the baseline jumper. You watch bigger guys like Giannis, like Jokic, like LeBron, you can't imitate. You can't do what Giannis does. You can't come careening down the lane with your 81-inch arms and jump on one foot and slam dunk it. You can't be the big Serbian Nikola Jokic, but what you can be is the 6'2" guard, 3-point shooter from Davidson. Like these smaller, like the face of the league has to be a smaller player, has to be a smaller guard.
But Jokic looks like us.
It's just they're more relatable. And
you're right. You can't, like something Jimmy just popped in.
Yeah.
You can't relate to Aaron Judge. Like Aaron Judge last night, his 12th home run. Aaron Judge is 6'8".
No.
And he's a monster playing center field and doing what he's doing. But I can relate to Steph. I can relate to Ant. Ant's not, 6'7", 6'8". Here's the other thing about kids making you the face of a league or a face of a particular like athletic department. And it's a prime example. We bring up Casey all the time about kids could relate to Casey, and Casey became the face of Nebraska basketball. There's a thing that still exists, and he hasn't played there for over a decade now. Kids made Doug McDermott the face of Creighton basketball all time because the 3 jersey was prevalent.
Yeah.
And Doug was doing things on the basketball floor that kids were imitating when they were out there playing in their AAU or, their CYO league or whatever, and they were wearing number 3. That's why, like Nebraska football, to bring them into this conversation, like, does Dylan become the face of Nebraska football because he's out there, he's everywhere, he's unique, he's got a unique haircut, he is the quarterback? Do kids imitate Dylan Raiola, which elevates him to being the face of Nebraska football? We as adults say, probably that's got to happen. But kids are the ones, again, that I think determine if you're the face of the league or a face of an athletic department or a particular team.
I think he already is the face of the athletic department, face of the football team. I think that's already been established with the amount of national attention that he's gotten, with how much that he's done within the state. The fact that, look, I would not be surprised if you see more and more kids with the Pit Viper glasses or, the haircut that they have, or, the classic running around with the 15 taped on the back of the jersey, right? Because the last 18 months now, even probably more than that, even probably before he came onto this campus, we were talking about Dylan Raiola. We were talking about the potential that he had, the impact that he could make on this team. And I think this summer in particularly, or not the summer, these past couple of months, right? These last 4 months, where him going to the high school basketball games and him going to the state championship.
How come they never did a T-shirt?
I don't know. They probably should have. That would have been a really good merchandise idea. The Dylan and Emmett tour. They can you imagine? They're sitting on like the scut benches and they got a cardboard box. They're selling shirts for $5 a pop, like right there, like they're a vendor. But I think that these last couple of months in his involvement has established him as the face. And we're at the point though where his play on the field is only going to elevate that or completely wipe that away. Because you can't be the face of the franchise on the bench. You can't be the face of the franchise being a below average player. But, it's interesting though. We, as a broadcast media conglomerate, like back to the NBA, like we don't talk about Jason Tatum as, he's for sure the next face of the league. He's for sure the next guy. But you look at the jersey sales.
You specifically texted me that he wasn't.
Well, yeah. And that's how I view it. But if we're talking from a kid's perspective, right?
Yeah, you don't see a lot of 0 jerseys.
Well, he's number 4 in top selling
Just Robert
NBA
Parrish.
jerseys. And I think that, especially in Boston, like that is a guy who the way that he plays and his kid having Deuce, like being the fatherly figure, like just his like positive. He's got it's a guy that hasn't gotten in a lot of trouble. That is kind of a player that you could look at as maybe the kids like that. Maybe the
Jason Tatum discussion is always fascinating to me.
It is.
Because he is one of the better players in the current day of the NBA. He has a championship ring. He has great success.
Pretty good, yeah.
But
he hasn't done. He is like a model citizen.
Yeah, but
of
then
the NBA.
But then he has Jalen Brunson between him and the rim, and he decides to step back and take a deep 3. Is that so?
Basket.
I take out Luka because Luka is. I think the last announcement was Luka has the top jersey sale in the NBA, but that makes sense.
Yeah,
because people that were Luka fans with the Mavs, they traded in their 77 Mavs jersey for a 77 Laker jersey, and he's going to the Lakers. And he's a new player on the Lakers, so people buy up the jersey.
Many of us have that
Who
body.
is second on that list?
Steph Curry.
Okay. Now that is
without hesitation.
Yep.
Now,
and that
he's not wrong.
You don't even you don't even look back. You're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Can I give you the guy who's number 6 though? And it's interesting on this list. The guy who's number 6 on this list. And it's interesting because he is the opposite of what we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that because he is so unique, he could end up being a guy that we look at as a face of the league, that you could see this jersey running around a lot with kids wearing it, and that's Victor Wembanyama.
Oh, I know him.
Because he is no one else is Victor Wembanyama, okay? Nobody can do what Victor Wembanyama does. And he's from France. You don't have any memories of Victor Wembanyama playing in college yet.
Is that just in the US or is that overall
this is
sales?
Top selling NBA jerseys.
So I imagine that includes international sales.
That'll go up when he wins the first.
He's got a whole country.
But I do think that that Wembanyama, he is so unique and he is so young, and we talk about him so highly, and we've never seen anything like him before, that he could maybe supersede that in a way, because let's be honest,
they got to win in San Antonio.
Yeah,
but
he's not on national TV as much.
But we haven't seen like
it's
Victor
coming.
Wembanyama shoots threes. Victor Wembanyama plays on the outside, and he can step back and he can do those incredibly creative things. We've seen guys like Giannis before in the degree of he's just bigger and stronger, and he puts his shoulder down and he gets to the bucket. Right? It's almost as if like Wembanyama being skinny and having to be like more of a skill player is to his advantage in terms of like being more likable.
There are ways to gain weight in San Antonio.
Relatable as a player.
Everything comes down to, are you still playing right now?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your
Can
legacy,
we watch you?
Your legacy is created. Yeah. If you're not playing in April and May, then I'm not watching a lot of Spurs games. Sorry.
It's okay.
Even though everything Matt just said about Wemby is absolutely true. Your time to
you got to play in May and June.
Elevate. Yeah, you've got to be playing right now so more people watch you. Look at until the Timberwolves went on this little bit of a run. Again, people are like, Ant played at Georgia. He played college basketball.
Yeah. Is he really an Ant?
Who was this guy? Now, as part of wrapping up this conversation about jersey sales, I would be fascinated, and I don't know how you would track this down. Because
never doubt me.
Is the most popular jersey number to be sold in Nebraska football. Like, think of if you go to a game and you either see an adult or a young fan wearing a jersey. 7 is still 7 is still huge. 22. I think Rex Burkhead's 22 might be the most popular jersey of all time in terms of sales because of the popularity of Rex. I think 22 and 7 are pretty close.
Was that your experiences there?
8. I never saw Amir Abdullah. I never saw too many 8 jerseys.
Like 3. You still go to a Creighton basketball game and you still see young fans wearing a number 3.
7. So thinking back on this, 7 was by far the most, the number I saw the most at football games. I did see a lot of 15. Funny enough, last season already with Dylan Raiola. 93 would probably be the next one.
For us,
I know.
Old heads.
I know. My wife just fell out of her bed with that.
Younger kids wearing 15.
then they have great parents because they've reminded him of the greatness.
I know Tommy
of
Frazier.
A man
I know Tommy Frazier.
From Bradenton.
I know Tommy Frazier. But I think that. But at this point, that's the impact he's already had, right? When you see
part of me just died a little.
Dylan Raiola. I mean, but that's what happens.
That's gonna be.
It's not your fault.
That's gonna be odd. You're like T. Frazier, and you see you make the rare appearance at a game, and you're like, hey, people still remember.
I think
you look on the field, and you're like, okay.
Now, number 1 is a jersey number I see a lot, but that's not because of like Jamari Butler or Billy Kemp IV or anything like that.
Jordan Westerkamp.
Well, it's just
Lawrence
more so
Phillips?
when you go to the
it's the
bookstore, it's the default number that you buy. Like
before, so there was a stretch where you could not sell. The only jersey you could sell was 1 or the year of the season.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay. That's I kind of like that actually. That's like, can you imagine if you had a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like you kind of collect that. You're like, hey, like I've been buying jerseys every single year. That's kind of cool. If I'm being honest, like you date all the way back to like 83. You're like 80. I got jersey numbers 83 through 9. Incredible. But wrapping this back up to Dylan Raiola and him being the face of the athletic department and the face of Nebraska football. You brought up something about the NBA, if we want to tie it back to that, where you said, if you're going to build your legacy, you have to be playing right now. That in the NBA, you got to be playing in this time in order to really establish yourself as the face of the league. For Dylan Raiola and Nebraska football, if Dylan Raiola is going to establish himself as the face of this athletic department, he's got to be playing meaningful games in November.
Well, you got to win when everyone's watching.
Exactly.
That dude's good.
And he's got to be playing
like
meaningful games in December. He's got to be making his hay, frankly, in the college football playoff. I'm not saying as a 1-seeder or 4-seeder or anything like that, but he's got to be
in the mix.
Be in the mix. We can't be in November. And it's like, well, Nebraska football's got to win this game, so they're 7-5. Like we can't be in November only talking about.
That's the case this year. You won't be talking about Dylan Raiola in year 3. I know that.
I mean,
somebody come pluck him.
I mean, it's just one of those things, though, that next season, if he's going to be the guy, we can't be sitting here being like, well, they got to win this game so we can get to the Holiday Bowl. No, it's you gotta win this game so you can still give yourself a shot to play yourself into the college football playoff or keep yourself in the college football playoff if he's going to be the bona fide, without a doubt, nationally face of Nebraska football.
Frank says, what about number 98? I only went to one Nebraska softball game.
I thought you were talking about Grant Wistrom.
No? I mean, 98's a unique number. That's what Jordy wears. I don't know that I was looking either. I was just more of like, she has the Shane Comine, Java Chamberlain effect when she warms up in the bullpen, is that everybody is standing there watching every single warm-up pitch.
The two numbers that, without a doubt, I see the most when I was at Nebraska was 7 and 30. Those were the two numbers. Scott Frost and Keisei Tominaga.
Oh,
those were the top two jerseys by far.
You also see a Sec Henry jersey. It might be the only one that exists.
I still, to this day, I'm so happy that I get to walk around Wrigley Field with my Dexter Fowler jersey. There's just a pride. There's a certain pride knowing that I'm the only one wearing 25 out there.
All right, coming up a little bit later, John Walker stops by, a man that owns many jerseys, but has never admitted it until today. Brandon Vogel as well, with the birds chirping in Chattanooga. He'll join us coming up in the last hour. I'm Gary and Matt on 1620 The Zone. Hey, how would you like to do business with an Omaha roofing company? I mean an Omaha roofing company, not somebody when there's storm damage, they just roll into our fair city and say, hey, you need a quote on that roof? Do business with an Omaha roofing company, Moose Roofing, focused on serving people. Residential roofing, roof repair and service, commercial roofing, gutters, siding. They are an Omaha roofing company. Bricks and mortar store. They've been in business for nearly 30 years, doing business from Western Iowa all the way to Lincoln. Now, here's how Moose Roofing works. And we have storm season, so your roof is going to take a beating, siding, gutters, that kind of stuff. And you're like, we got to get this fixed. Moose Roofing, they will help you. They sit down with you. They go through your wants, your needs, and what they can provide They'll get to know you and your home because they know all of the elements of the roofing system that helps you in the end save money. And they will also help you navigate that very difficult insurance process, your claims process, and you're like, oh, geez, I don't think, Pat, this is going to work. Pat will even pick up the phone. He'll talk to your insurance company. That's what they do. They go the extra step at Moose Roofing because they want you as a client for life. Residential roofing, roof repair and service, commercial roofing, they do it all. Schedule an appointment today. You'll get the inspection. The consultants will come out. They'll sit down with you, the project manager, and they will then be dedicated to making your project stress-free. For more information, log on to the website, mooseroofing.com.
Don't miss your chance to win $5,000 damn dollars with the Mo Money giveaway. Oh, yes. Enter to win now. 1620thezone.com with Saul's Jewelry and Loan and 1620 The Zone. That's the website.
Also, go to that website. We are giving away a trip to go see Kenny Chesney. A once-in-a-lifetime trip to go to Las Vegas to see Kenny Chesney at the Sphere. Tickets, airfare, stay at the Luxor. All covered, but you have to go to our website to enter. Congratulations to yesterday's qualifiers, Jim Hempel, Steve Eppenbaugh, and Ryan Engel. You could be today's qualifier. Just go to 1620thezone.com, go to the contest page, fill it out, and you might be going to see Kenny.
Couple weeks
in July.
Is when they'll
and
draw.
Kenny, yes. Go out there. Same time that the NBA Summer League is going on. Mm-hmm. Stick around.
Mm-hmm. See Cooper Flagg. See Bryce Williams. See Ryan Kalkbrenner.
Stick around for Bud in September. And just stay there. The Raiders will bring visiting teams there.
I actually am really curious what a Kenny Chesney concert in the Sphere is going to look like, because
it'll be like the Arrowhead show, but in the Sphere.
Well, I just like, you can kind of imagine nothing at all, by the way, like the Arrowhead show, but
it's a pretty good show.
Like, I feel like you can kind of imagine what a Grateful Dead show would look in the Sphere, and maybe like the different kind of things that they would put in the background or whatnot. Mm-hmm. Like, I wonder what what it's going to look like. Was it just going to be a backdrop of a saloon the entire time? You know, like, it's just going to be the
flops.
It's just going to
flip-flops, beach,
the entire
SEC football highlights.
The entire time, it's just, they're going to put like a projector screen of like them, like of Kenny Chesney at a honky tonk, and it's just different areas of the honky tonk.
Fine ball walks in.
Ed writes into the Equitable Bank inbox, Gary at 1620thezone.com.
Hi, Ed.
He said, Gary, it's another morning. I'm very depressed. Now, if I just stopped reading there, I wouldn't.
You would think it was for me, even though I'm in a good mood.
But he has sent numerous emails, and this is pertaining to Nebraska baseball, which last night the rally came up short, lost to Kraton 8-7. He said, "You've used the line before. Are you ready to quit?" He goes, "I think last night did me in.
Oh, no.
That I am ready to quit Nebraska baseball for the 25 season." I don't know that, Ed, I would use the word depression, but this has been a season to forget, with the expectations that have been out there, and now a game under 500, fighting to get into the Big Ten tournament. I sensed last night, so there comes a point, and for some reason, I still have faith that Nebraska is going to make it to the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah.
If they made it to the Big 12 tournament, that'd be a hell of a season.
Whoa, that'd be a topic.
But I don't know what'll happen when they get here, because they're consistently inconsistent. That sometimes you just want the season to be over. The season might end up where you get to Omaha, but you're kind of like, I know there's going to be changes in the offseason. There's going to be a fall guy. Whoever's in charge of base running should never set foot back in Haymarket Park in 2026, because that's absolutely atrocious. That is the sign of a team. And I get it the first part of the year, but that's been a case all year. I'm not blaming the coaches, by the way. There's some guys that have regressed, at the plate or on the mound. I don't put that all on the coaches. But there does come a point where you're like, you know what? I'm ready for the season to be over, because I know in my mind what changes are going to happen. We're going to play out the season. And you know what? Maybe we catch lightning in a bottle, and the next thing you know, we're in the NCAA tournament. But it's not going to change what I'm going to do in the offseason.
Sure.
There's a part of listening to Will, especially after last night, and the way you lost that game and who you lost it to, and the fact that you were sloppy and it looked like at the beginning of the game you were unprepared, is, you know what? It's the season. It's been a long season. It's a long season, and it's getting towards the end. And you know what? I know what we're going to do in the offseason. Now, Will's not going to go anywhere.
Sure.
But they're going to have to shake some things up in the offseason. I don't know if I'd use the word depression. I would use more of a frustration of, they should be much better than 24 and 25. Should they be a 32-win team? Yeah, no problem being that. But they're not, and it's their own fault. It's not they're getting beat by better teams.
Yeah.
It is their own fault that they are 24 and 25 with 6 to go.
The similarities between the Nebraska basketball team this season and the Nebraska baseball team this season, let's take away preseason hype. Let's just talk about what we've seen comparatively on the field and on the court.
But can you?
I think you can, because
I think you look at it different, though, if you had your expectations for baseball were much higher, being a top 25 team hosting a regional. Good
point.
The equivalent for men's basketball would be top 4 of the Big Ten again,
Sure.
like you did the previous year.
But the thing is, though, is that the way that they've lost these games, right? How many times in Nebraska basketball this year did we say, hey, that was on them? That was because of their effort. That was because of bad awareness, self-inflicted wounds. And when they lost to Ohio State, it was one of the first times where I was like, that was a basketball game. They properly lost a basketball game where they gave their effort and they did what they could to win that game, and the ball just didn't bounce their way.
Kelly Pfeiffer.
They had so many games, though, where they lost, and you're like, well, that's because they just weren't locked in. They weren't focused. They weren't ready to play. I think that's similarly what's happened with Nebraska baseball, where yesterday, that wasn't them just losing a baseball game and them being competitive. That was them losing the baseball game because they personally just did not play well in so many different aspects of the game. And then you can look at it a different way. Nebraska baseball and Nebraska basketball both beat top teams, both beat some of the best teams in the country and made you believe, hey, they could turn this around. They could be a team that makes it to the playoffs, that makes a little bit of a run. And then what do they do right after that? They lose to teams that they absolutely shouldn't lose to. And they do it because they did it to themselves and no one else. So I think those similarities are there for me.
So they're 6-9 against quad 1 teams. They're 7-8 against quad 3. Their RPI actually, since I last looked after the game last night, has gone up. So they're 68. At the end of the game, they were 71. Let me check Kraton real quick. But Creighton's RPI, by the way, is 58. Kraton has not played a quad 1 game all year long.
Wow.
That's the problem of playing in the Big East. If you're Kraton, they've had a good year at 32-13, but again, they haven't played anybody that's in a quad 1. They may win the regular season. There's no guarantee you'll be in the NCAA tournament. D1 baseball yesterday did their field of 64. Creighton's not even in the next 4 out or anything like that. They have one team from the Big East, and that's UConn as a 3 seed.
Yeah.
And that's just, okay, they're going to get one bid, and it's whoever is going to win the tournament in Ohio. That just shows you the Big East. The other part of this whole thing about Nebraska baseball this year, and they're going to have, you can't have the continuous roller coaster where one year you're really good, the next year you're really frustrating, and then you're going to turn around and you're going to be really, really good again. You can't do that. That's not a sign of a healthy program. It just isn't. I'd rather be consistently bad than ride the roller coaster. But in the offseason, you're going to have the conversation about, one, what are you going to do with your roster? Because you're going to lose some guys, and you also are adding another round of players. Some guys regress this year. Those guys have to look in the mirror. But your conversation is going to have to involve an aspect that is uncomfortable and that we really don't have because we like him. Rob Childress.
Yeah.
Rob and Will aren't going anywhere, and they shouldn't go anywhere. But Rob hasn't had a good year. Okay, no. But Rob is, and I love Rob, and I've known Rob since 1998 when he walked in the door with Dave Van Horn. It hasn't been a good year, but sometimes we like Rob because Rob's a good guy, that he is away from any criticism. Well, that pitching staff, even with the loss of your ace and the loss of a guy that was going to be on the back end that now actually might be your Sunday guy, and I think Timmerman will play that role well, they haven't met the moment. They haven't consistently been good when you've needed guys, especially out of the bullpen, to be good, or they shock you and they have 3 straight bad outings, and then all of a sudden they come in and they're lights out and they're striking out guys with runners on the corners. Like, where has that been? But I think there will be a fall guy from this year of Nebraska baseball on Nebraska's coaching staff.
I just think that heading into the season, you had a lot of veteran pitching on the staff that you were hoping that they were going to take the next step, that they were going to go from being a good pitching staff to being a great pitching staff. And with having Rob Childress at that helm and the experience and in his resume, you kind of thought that was a given, that was going to happen, that come at this point in the season, that you could really trust the back end of this bullpen and consistently get 4 or 5 innings out of your starter. Now, this is more so of a weekend combo than a midweek combo, right? But I just think that they haven't done that. They have not done that. They have not taken that step. They have not improved. And that's why they were ranked to begin the preseason, because they had so many returning guys. And there was that assumption that, hey, they could take this. If they take this one step further, they could be an elite team in the Big Ten. They haven't done that. And I still think that, Coach Childress overall has done a good job. And it's,
you're afraid to criticize Rob, aren't you?
Yeah,
he's a grown man. I mean, he's been through it before. Look at
you're right. He hasn't had
put
a
up
good
with
year
at Texas A&M.
They haven't taken the step that they needed to take. But you could say that about the hitters as well. I mean, you can say that this about the entirety of the Nebraska baseball team this year, that this team was returning a lot of guys and you were thinking that they could take a step and that one of these guys on this team outside of Mason McConaughey could emerge as a, star, as like a borderline, hey, all Big Ten, All-American guy. They haven't had that progress from anyone on this team, which is incredibly disappointing. And I think another thing too, what this boils down is you talk about you having the highs and the lows and the highs and the lows. It just seems like with Will Bolt that when he doesn't have the most in terms of talent, he does a lot with it. But when you have all that returning talent and you have a lot with that talent, you can't double down and take another big jump. They haven't been able to do that. That's 2 seasons now where you have high expectations with plenty of talent returning, and you're not able to capitalize on that and turn that into, postseason contention.
Again, I would use frustrating over depression, but here's the thing, and then, I don't know, it's a Nebraska baseball thing, and there is history of what happened last year, is you can't quit them. I mean, let's have an honest conversation here. There is still a part that even with the frustration of last night, and there's the euphoria of Saturday and Sunday against Minnesota, but then there's also the, God dang it, decisions out of the dugout.
Yeah.
That game on Friday night against Minnesota is you can't quit them because you think they'll get to Omaha and there'll be magic there, and that they will get on a run, and all of a sudden Omaha will carry Nebraska to Sunday, and they will be on a bubble, and there will be 18,000 people on Sunday back again at the Chuck. And you'll be like, oh, this is going to happen again. That's the part you can't quit. No, there's.
No, I know. I agree with you.
They're getting smaller and smaller.
I agree. Yeah, but I think I'm out of that pool now.
Because they're going to come back and they'll against Michigan this weekend. What if they win the series against Michigan? I've been saying this for a couple of weeks. I'm glad the at-large conversation is, and you got to do it yourself. But it's the past history of Will is you can't fully quit them because you never know. That's
a bad characteristic to have.
No, that's why I said it's a sign. A roller coaster 1 year, great. The other year, is not a sign of a fully healthy program. And I'm sure there will be things when this season is over, is the leadership, which probably hasn't been as strong as last year. They had some really, really good leaders that ran out of eligibility or moved on to professional baseball that when things were going south, kept that team together. And so you didn't have as many highs and lows.
Yeah.
And then when your highs, they were really, really high. Your lows weren't super, super low. And I don't know. I mean, this just feels like this year that there will be a fall guy. There will be, people will whisper and people go, man, how come X didn't get better? And they'll turn around next year and that X that didn't get better will be better. And you'll go, WTF.
Yeah.
WTF. Welcome to the Nebraska baseball experience.
And then you're thinking, hey, why couldn't he do this when we had more talent on the team the year before, right? And then next year is going to be, I can't really speak on what the team is fully going to look like next year, but I think positive, confidently, I'm going to say they're not going to be ranked heading into the preseason next year. And so then it's going to be the whole time when they're playing next year, you're going to be like, is this real or not? Or is this like, can I latch onto this? Can I actually trust this program? Can I really believe in this team? Because history has shown us that, hey, they go on these runs and they go on these stretches like that, but then they also can have 9 walks and an error and bad base running and all the things that just make a bad baseball team.
Dookie Clint says Nebraska baseball is too easy to quit. That's the problem, and it's unfortunate. There'll still be 6,000 people there Friday night. I mean, it's like Nebraska men's basketball.
It is.
And there had been more of a taste of success, but now it's a long time ago.
Sure.
With baseball, is you want it so bad. Like that's if you've been to, I don't know if you've been to Haymarket Park this year, but as it's warmed up and Nebraska's gotten to the second half of their schedule, you can feel it. It's just like going to PBA. You can feel it. Fans want it so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You get groin kick after groin kick, and you keep coming back because it's the sport, whether it be men's basketball or baseball, that you want. You want so badly to have success. You want so badly for baseball to be relevant and baseball to live up to what a decade plus ago was said, is they're going to walk into the Big Ten and they're going to take over. And they're not going to have the ups and downs, and they're consistently going to be 1, 2, or 3. They're consistently going to be in the NCAA tournament, and every 3 or 4 years they're going to be hosting at Haymarket Park. You can't quit them. You can't quit them. If last night would be a night to say, all right, for me it was, by the way. We're 49 games in, and now it's time. I've had enough.
I have.
But we'll see you Friday night.
I have. For me, that yesterday, and I agree with the emailer, that was kind of it for me. Because I was just like, man, we're 50 games into the year. We're still getting thrown out on the base paths. We're still hitting 4 batters. We're still picking up the ball and throwing. A crucial double play, right, in I think it was the 4th inning or the 6th inning, like Harrell picks it up.
The 4th inning.
You got to make that play. We got to make that play. You got to pick that up.
They have 1 inning a game. 1 inning a game where they just crater. And then you're down 6-0. And then it's 8-7 in the bottom of the ninth. You're like, this is going to happen, isn't it? You turn to your buddy watching the game and you're like, this is going to happen. And they're like, Gabe's on deck. And then it doesn't. All right, a little bit later, John Walker, Brandon Vogel will stop by the show on this midday edition on a day where the association has 2 famous anniversaries. I'll tell you what happened on this day. May 7th, to be exact.
I know.
Oh, yeah. One place doesn't even exist anymore. It was out in a farm field, and now it's gone because of the guy that closed it down.
Mm-hmm.
It's Gary and Matt with Jimmy on 1620 The Zone. John writes into the Equitable Bank inbox about the Kenny Chesney trip to Vegas that you can qualify on 1620thezone.com. Said Josh tried to give it away yesterday.
Like the whole thing?
Whoa. Whoa. He tried to sell the whole...
I don't know. I mean,
we got to qualify. We got qualifiers. We have rules.
Yeah.
We have a whole pamphlet about
you
how
listen
this
to
is
the
supposed
show,
to
Matt.
happen.
I thought you'd know.
No, I wasn't listening to Unsportsmanlike yesterday, but I am a
So congratulations to the person that thought they won.
Yeah.
Instead, you're just in the old hopper.
Oh, he actually gave it away. Like,
Johnson tried to give it away.
Yeah, it's over.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, I mean, I've heard about the whole. I've watched that one video where they tried to do blackjack and the dealer's still hitting on 18. That was there's a
Is that a Family Guy
that's
episode?
a mistake that we can make.
Colin's email. Will's best teams have had Friday night hammers, Povich and Sears.
Watch Povich pitch last night.
Yeah, I got to imagine there's a change coming in the Oriole dugout.
Yeah.
I got hammered by the Twins last night, and I think they have too much talent to be as poor as they are.
At least one team downtown.
Man, there
there
are nights where Cade pitches, and we're talking about Cade Povich, who Bell West, Nebraska. By the way, his dad, Cade's pitched like close to home of late.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City and Minnesota, Timon and the family have been able to go see him in person.
That's
and
awesome.
They haven't had to fly all over the country. He gets no run support.
Cade does.
Colin
scored one run yesterday.
Colin is right about the Friday night starter, and we'd all love to have a Friday night starter. Nebraska's best teams historically have been a hammer on Friday night. You know, Mason McConaughey was supposed to be that guy.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make up for some of the just bad either decisions that come out of the dugout or bad base running. The base running is amazing. I thought the Kansas City Royals last year were a terrible base running team, and they are again this year. And then I watched Nebraska play this year. And the amount of times that they have run themselves out of innings, or it could have set up as a big inning and over-aggressiveness when there doesn't need to be, and you're thrown out. Or the ball is in the dirt, and why are you still on first base when you should be on second? And that changes the whole dynamic of a late inning. It's been that has been a consistent. I think, though, I will tell you this again. This is part of the can't quit. I think Ty Horn moving to the number one will be okay. I like that. I like that for the next two conference series, and then I imagine he would pitch. You know, Nebraska would play on a Tuesday or Wednesday if they qualify for the Big Ten tournament. That he would then go from pitching on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and pitching on Tuesday. I think Ty Horn will be okay in that role.
I'm excited for Sunday. I'm excited to see Tucker Timmerman start, because this is a guy who they very much trusted out of the bullpen earlier in the year, and then obviously, suffers that insane injury when he takes a fastball right to the face, and it kind of derails his season. But when he returns, he looks sharp in his last couple outings. I'm excited to see if that is, him being the third starter is something that can translate not only for the rest of this season and maybe give them a little bit momentum heading into the Big Ten playoffs if they make it, but also next year, if he plays well as a Sunday starter, can we look to him to maybe even moving into that Saturday slot or being a consistent weekend starter? And so I think, obviously Friday and Saturday are going to be your more competitive games because those are your top starters going. But Sunday is, for me, incredibly intriguing because of him taking that role.
Hey, as we finish this hour, there was some baseball chatter nationally about Omaha yesterday. Ken Rosenthal and AJ Przinsky were doing their podcast together.
Oh,
you an AJ guy?
You know what? I like AJ. AJ is one of the very few Sox that I actually really, really do like.
Does he go on?
Does Michael Barrett like him?
He used to be, I don't know if he's on CHSN right now, but he was a mainstay of Comcast. He was on a ton. He is one of the very few 2000 Chicago athletes that has stuck around, period, end of story, that has been a constant in terms of opinions and, being a pundit and having
TV.
A presence. He's great. You know what? He wanted to be the manager for the Chicago White Sox this year, and he should have been. He absolutely...
He'd get them to play hard.
Well, after the way they played in the ninth inning last night, they folded.
That's exactly, too, what that city needed.
Thanks for the memes, Will Venables.
But
I 100% agree with you. I'd love to see AJ in the dugout.
And he'd be a great manager.
Ozzy.
Absolutely not.
Modern day Ozzy in a way.
I'm not an Ozzy guy. Okay, you don't have to ask that. I'll answer that question for you. Not an Ozzy guy, but I am an AJ guy. What did AJ say?
So they were talking, and I don't. So I think they were aware of this. They were talking about the Major League Baseball draft.
Okay.
And it being in Omaha. So before COVID, Major League Baseball wanted Omaha to have a presence attached to the College World Series because Major League Baseball had put out the olive branch to college baseball and they were going to be more of partners.
Great idea.
We're going to play a game, a regular season game at the home of the College World Series, and leading up to the College World Series, we're going to have the Major League Baseball draft, a 3-day event.
Yeah.
And the plans that were put together were pretty fantastic. Like they were going to do the Orpheum. Wow. They looked at the Orpheum. They looked at the Holland, the CHI for having a big
Energy Lounge
where they could have it on the floor and they would have people in the stands
Baxter
and stuff like that.
Would be really good for that, I think. No,
they want to go big.
They want to go bigger.
Yeah.
You think you'd get?
And they also want to be where the College World Series is, so downtown Omaha.
Sure, good point.
And then COVID hit, and Major League Baseball completely changed, where they took over minor league baseball and they moved the draft back an entire month. So those plans were squelched. And I think Major League Baseball has gotten more of a bump by attaching it to the All-Star game. So whatever city the All-Star game is, the Major League Baseball draft starts on Sunday.
Okay.
And it's televised on MLB Network. Now, the problem always with the Major League Baseball draft is unless you are a diehard and you are on the MLB pipeline, you don't know who most of these players are.
Absolutely.
So that makes it a little bit tough. So you try and present the event. I love that they were talking about it and how cool it would be.
It's a good idea.
But hey, we were excited. Like
Omaha.
There were people like, you know what, this is going to elevate this event. Omaha's an event town. They're going to show up for it. You're going to have all these celebrities in town. It'll be a nice build up to the College World Series. It'll put more attention on college baseball. I don't think that's the case. I think unless your team is playing in the College World Series, there's far more majority of fans that come here just because it's the event and it's cool to go to and you hang out. I don't think you come here because you're a college baseball fan. But I love that they were talking about it, but it's one of those ideas that, damn, COVID. Because it would be here and we would support it really well.
It would have gone well.
It would be great. It'd be great. And honestly, too, that I think it would be one of those funny things where, sure, when you step into wherever they would put this event, right? When you step into CHI and a certain team drafts a guy, you may not know who he is. Hell, you may not know 60 to 70% of who these guys are getting drafted are, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, having that moment, seeing that player get drafted, you now kind of attach yourself to his career, right, in a certain way, where if you saw this guy get drafted, I saw him get picked, number 13. I was right there. He walked on, he, flashed the jersey, whatever. And then he ends up having a great career. You kind of attach yourself to that. And I think that, your draft is only as good as what your lead up to that draft is, and meaning that college football is massive, which is why the NFL draft in part is massive. And college basketball is big, which is why the NBA draft is big. NHL and the MLB suffer from that. And so
don't you think it's because we don't watch
enough
college hockey or major junior hockey or college baseball?
Yeah. And that's the base of it. But I think from the MLB's perspective of, hey, let's just make this event as big as we can. So when they enter the league, we can have more of a connection from fans to player. I think that's really, really smart. But unfortunately,
college coaches hated the idea.
Why? Why do they hate the idea?
Because they'd be up here for the College World Series and you'd have, I think college baseball coaches, I think, like the draft being well after their season is over.
Yeah.
We have the famous story of Pat Burrell playing for Miami, got drafted while he was in the on-deck circle of a game at Rosenblatt in the College World Series.
That's funny. That's awesome.
A little bit later, John Walker will stop by. We'll talk some hoops, y'all. Plus Brandon Vogel, now that we're into the offseason. And the offseason with Nebraska football never ends. We're going to tell you where something just popped up that might be one of the stranger things involving Nebraska football. We'll do that when we come back. Gary Matt, 1620 The Zone. You feel like we should be at a South Carolina Gamecock game?
No, I was about to say I feel like I'm at Mackey right now. Ooh. Doing the fist bumps.
He does that well.
No, I don't.
Trying to be positive.
My sister almost got to Purdue. That would have been brutal. I would have not been a fan of that whatsoever.
That's a fun place to see a game. Not a great place to call a game when your team is getting crushed. But Mackey Arena is definitely a unique venue. But because you're right, they got kind of mocked a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But
it gets mocked consistently now. Like, it is a funny thing to do for the opponent where they're winning. They'll just start going, they'll start fist pumping the ground in the air. I don't know. It's just, it's funny though. Like when they do the Big Ten media days, they bring all the coaches in. They're like, what's the toughest place to play? Every single one of them, a lot of them go, oh, Mackey for sure. Mackey Arena. Like, so we can make fun of them and mock them and everything like that. But that crowd brings them. That's awful place.
Now, if you go to Williams-Brice Stadium, which is the home of the Gamecocks in Columbia, by the way, if you ever go there, seriously, I'm just serious. When I was living in Charleston, went to a couple of games. Make sure you find a way to tailgate in the cabooses. They're outside of the stadium.
Cabooses?
Yep, they're cabooses.
Like what you would have on a train?
They look like a caboose.
Yeah. That's incredible.
And so it is, you can buy tailgate spots. And so they're right outside of the stadium. Okay. They're out behind, not the end zone that has the big scoreboard, but the other end zone.
They have your own bathroom.
But when you go, first of all, do not, they'll say we're Carolina. To me, there's only one Carolina, that's north. Yeah. Then they will say we are, because part of this song that they play, Sandstorm, before South Carolina runs on the field, is everybody chants USC. And the first time I went, I was like,
yeah,
they listen to that show there,
bro. The only USC is the University of Southern California, and they will go, no, it is the University of South Carolina. So, but it's a great atmosphere. When they start playing this, and Cocky gets going, and Williams-Brice Stadium is packed, it's pretty cool. That's a unique environment. Like, that's a good night game, because when game day was there, what's the Derude?
Yes.
Yeah. Didn't ESPN bring him to play Sandstorm live on game day?
Sounds like something they would have done.
They definitely would do that. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But when I hear that song, I think of USC.
Mm-hmm. Well,
South Carolina.
See, unfortunately, I think of K-State basketball, or I guess other
they play
sports.
It in Bramlage.
Yeah, they even had a chant to go with it. But
no, I bet that chant was.
It's very wholesome.
Nebraska basketball plays Sandstorm every single game, and
it warms the heart.
We don't go UNL or anything like that. We don't have any chant.
Maybe we should start.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And you.
Nope. But you're not in you. You're not in you.
Everyone in the Big Eight was a something.
But I did meet somebody, and I was.
There's only really one NU in the Big Ten, right, Lincoln?
No, there's a team in Evanston. There's a team in Evanston.
Are they still playing football?
God, they're going to be bad this year.
They're ever getting their stadium? They're building that?
I don't know. It was put on hold after they found out what was going on in the locker rooms. So I think that kind of delayed delayed some things. The academic offices were like, "Are we really going to give all of that money to that department right now after what's going on? We would like some more research, or like get our journalism department some more computers or iPads or Chromebooks or something."
Win total in Evanston this year, 3.5.
Yeah, it's going to be
take the under.
Rough.
That's a great schedule, though. As you being a Northwestern fan, you get to watch some really good teams because they play Michigan, Oregon, Penn State, and Southern Cal. And they also play Tulane.
Hey,
if you are a Northwestern fan, that's a great schedule. Look at the temes you're going to get to watch.
Tulane was in the SEC.
I'm going to go to you at the end of the year and go, who should be in the playoff, because you've seen some of the best teams.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you, I can't tell a difference, but because they all kicked my team's ass. That's what it is. They all look, Gary, I got no idea, because they all looked incredible. They all looked like world beaters.
I remember those days.
Northwestern historically will be in one of those games. They won't win one of those games, but they will be in one of those games. Yeah. I would expect like a kickoff return for a touchdown against like Oregon or something like that, or like some like weird special teams thing.
Where my other choices
happen, and you're going to be in the third quarter and be like, oh my god, It's only
Michigan,
a 3-point
Oregon,
game.
SC,
And then,
SC, that's the game.
The cream will rise to the top, and then they'll end up getting their butts whooped.
Our good friend Michael Bruntz has been with the fam. They've been traveling for a couple of weeks. He is in Norway.
Oh, nice.
As he is traveling through the airport in Norway, he has come across a display on a wall there in Norway. It is titled "Score," and it has generic photos of a soccer player. It has a generic photo, actually, of an Oral Roberts basketball player, because I can tell from the old scoreboard at Mabee Center. And then it has just a generic, like, Division III football scrum.
Sports.
Then there's Adrian Martinez scoring in Boulder in 2019. Yeah. It actually does not have the N blurred out. No. You can clearly tell that this is Nebraska.
The N's for Norway.
Hey, Larry the Cable Guy is in the background on the sidelines.
He is in the background
for a touchdown. I'm going to need some clarification from Mr. Bruntz on why is this up on the wall in an airport in Norway?
Greater Oslo.
Does Adrian Martinez have a connection to Norway?
Can you imagine, like, the Bruntz family? They're trying to get on the airplane, and Michael is like, we cannot go anywhere until I find someone who's attached to this airport and get the proper reason as to why Adrian Martinez is on. I don't think I could not leave Norway knowing that that's there, and I don't know. There's got to be someone who works at that airport, who's a high-ranking official there, who gets to decide what goes on the wall decor. And he was like, you know what? Just so I can get a little bit of a taste from home, I'm going to put a Nebraska football picture in the Oslo airport.
I'm just going to take it that they're big after-hours fans in Norway.
You know,
our former coworker.
Funny thing too, if you were to tell somebody, "Hey, could you believe that's an away game for Nebraska football?" There, they'd be like, "Really?" It's actually a great picture. It's something that, like, it sends a message.
Norwegians for Nebraska.
Passionate. Nebraska football travels. Unfortunately, we're not going to tell those people who ask about that game how that game ended. But
yeah, I wouldn't ask Troy Walters. Do they play football in Norway? The American football. Will they have a team in the 28 Olympics playing flag football? Is football big in Norway? American football?
I don't believe so.
Could the Big 12 reach out?
Well, I look forward.
Is there a Norwegian football player that we could put our finger on that we immediately remember? Rain Man?
You know what? I didn't brush up on my Norwegian football players this morning.
Man, I can't wait for the flag football in the Olympics. That Australian team is going to be awesome at special teams. I mean, talk about a team that's going to be rooted in all three phases. Lord, that team.
Look forward to, after Bruntz has shared this picture, that ESPN will congratulate Taylor Martinez on making the wall at the airport in Oslo.
See what you did there?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, good call.
They'll never live that down.
No, they won't.
All right. So congratulations to Adrian. I don't know if he was dubbed
Mr. Norway.
Oh,
But of all the generic pictures, all of a sudden there's a very specific picture on the wall at the Oslo airport.
Maybe Adrian had a internship at one point in Norway at the airport, and I was like, guys, I have an idea of what to put up on this wall.
Speaking at the Oslo Cornhuskers banquet.
Help me. Hey.
Norwegians for Nebraska. That's a great club. We got to start that.
Do we have an embassy?
A Nebraska football embassy? Or
no, just do we have any trade? Do we have a sister city in Norway?
Oh, great question. I don't know.
Ord has a sister city in Norway, or
I would assume we'd have a sister city in Germany, right?
Somewhere.
A lot of sister cities. It allows politicians to travel and do trade.
I grew up in the sister city of Pisa.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you grew up in Skokie.
I thought you grew up in Chicago.
Skokie and Pisa are sister cities.
Like Leaning Tower?
So did you go to the sister city to live, or?
No. Well, like you have connections, right? Like a sister city is like there's one city in one country, one city in the other country.
Oh, you said you lived there.
Not lived there. No, Skokie, its sister city was Pisa. And in one of the big hubs of Skokie, there's the Leaning Tower. And it's actually
practically the same
It's actually
thing.
Our water tower. That's like a water tower.
That's leaning?
It's shaped as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It's right next to the YMCA on Tui. There you go. Fun fact.
So win totals, I think if you are, I don't know, none of the sports, look, maybe one sports book has officially put out win totals for the season, but Nebraska's win total is going to be at 7.5. I'm pretty secure that isn't going to change.
Yeah.
Interesting about win totals, and Again, I think Nebraska's win total is predicated on what they do on the road with Maryland, Minnesota, UCLA, and Penn State. You can go from anywhere from 6 to 9, but 7.5. A lot of people will hit the over again to go 8-4, at least 8-4. But you want to explain to me something here?
Yeah,
you're a little sleuth.
Yep.
Man, who will be the Indiana of 2025? A team in the Big Ten gets mentioned quite frequently. They are in Champaign, Illinois. They have their returning quarterback. They return their tackles. They return 18 starters. They won 10 football games last year. They have Brett Bielema, who knows how to win in the Big Ten. So if there's going to be an Indiana of 2025 in the Big Ten or in college football, a lot of people will say it'll be the Fighting Illini. But they also say, will Illinois be on the list of preseason top 10 teams that finish the year unranked?
Yeah.
But riddle me this.
Yeah.
Why does Illinois and Nebraska have the same win total?
Couldn't tell you. It makes it. Well, I'll tell you
7.5 is their win total.
I'll tell you why. Because I think it really boils down to no one, like there's no casual college football fans who look at Illinois and are saying, hey, that's a football power. That's a traditional power. Illinois doesn't have the history of winning and doesn't have, you go to Champaign, Illinois, those students who go there, they don't go to the football games, right? They watch those football games from their band. They don't, or from all those bars. They don't have those like in-rooted traditions. This is what we do. You show up to Champaign and you play football. Like that's just not a football school. That's a basketball school.
Now he's made it respectable.
Oh,
like compared to
Brett Bielema,
the two guys that were there previously.
But Illinois' success isn't necessarily rooted in, it's Illinois. It's rooted in the fact that Brett Bielema is one hell of a coach. And he's been able to recruit really well, and then even better than that, develop incredibly well. I mean, Illinois has, over the last couple of years, have had some really high draft picks. And so I think this just boils down to, if you know, when it comes to Illini football. If you know that they're bringing back, I think it's 19 returning starters from a team that, if they didn't lose to Minnesota last year, would have been in that fringe college football playoff conversation. If you know, Luke Altmaier took massive steps from 2 seasons ago to last season and is poised to take another step like that. Like, I think this is just a classic. Vegas is looking at the names and looking at the national headlines and looking at the titles, and you have to dig deeper to find out that Illinois has a real chance of making the college football playoff. Then you have to dig to find out that, hey, Nebraska could potentially turn.
Things, because this was a discussion yesterday. There was a lot of college football talk on national Sirius XM yesterday, and then on ESPN, is who has an Indiana-type schedule where in the top tier of the Big Ten, you maybe only play 1 or 2 of those teams, and you have a lot more teams that you're on your schedule that are, like I said yesterday, they're equal or below you.
Yeah.
Where, Nebraska will have 6 of those.
Yeah.
They only have Indiana and Ohio State. Probably the only 2 teams on their schedule right now that are going to be preseason top 25. They do have a trip to Seattle. They do have a trip to Madison, but they have an Indiana-like schedule that sets you up for a potential college football playoff trip if you take care of business.
I think this.
But they both have 7.5 is their win total. That's kind of interesting.
Washington is a trap game for them for sure. I think Rutgers could be a trap game for them as well. Illinois, historically, in the later parts of the year when they're playing at home, just always seem to drop a game that they should win. They've done that even under Brett Bielema. But if you're just looking at this from a plain just. Let's just look at this. They're going to be favored in 10 of their games. Like they are going to be favored. Like they're playing USC at home, right? If they were on the road, maybe that would be, depending on what happens, throughout the season, maybe that they could be an underdog, but they're not because they're at home. So this Indiana game early on in the year, week 4, their first Big Ten game of the season, you could argue is probably the most important game of the year, because from that point on, you're going to have one game for the rest of the season that you truly are going to be an underdog in, and that Ohio State game is at home. I mean, this Illinois team has a legitimate path to 11-1. Like not just if it swings here, if it swings there. No, they have a legit, straightforward path to only losing one game against Ohio State, which, heck, you never know what could happen in that regard. Nebraska nearly beat Ohio State last season on the road. Like, it's, we played the games for a reason, but they have a really talented defensive line. They have some talent. Losing Josh McCray is pretty tough for them. He ended up transferring to Georgia. They lost Pat Bryant, which is going to be tough to replace for them. He was a dynamic wide receiver, but that defense is going to be real stingy this year. And I'm impressed with how they've been able to recoup all that talent after losing Ryan Walters, because I think losing Walters, I was worried for them after that happened because he was just such a dynamic defensive coordinator. The fact that they've been able to kind of recover from that and still have solid defenses has been impressive from Bielema.
The best thing he did all offseason was he retained guys.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so Indiana's win total is 8.5.
Got to look at their schedule. I know that they have a much tougher schedule than.
But it's not. It's not a daunting schedule. But do you flip the switch of once you get the taste? And Cignetti can't get Notre Dame out of his mouth. He keeps bringing up Notre Dame all the time. Now, the one thing about Indiana, who has a quarterback, Mr. O'Rourke is going to be at an NFL camp.
Yeah.
They love Fernando Mendoza. Remember that name. There is now starting a hype train with NFL scouts for him.
Man,
But Indiana now has a win total of 8.5. The other thing, Bielema retained talent. One thing that is key for Cignetti after the success that they had in his first year in Bloomington is he retained his staff. The majority of his coaching staff returned for another year in Bloomington. They didn't ride the gravy train out of town to bigger and better jobs. They stuck around. I think that's important with a program that's in year 2 where they don't have the influx of all the transfers.
Yeah.
So now they're established, and also people know who they are. Like, you're not going to overlook Indiana this year.
That's how you, things like that decimate a program in a way, because you have 1 year where you're incredible, you come out the chute, nobody expects you to be there, and then immediately you lose some of the guys who helped build that culture, right? Indiana had 1 year of success, but you need more than just 1 year of success to actually build sustainability. And losing guys who establish that within the building that aren't named Curt Cignetti is a massive way to derail that. But one over-under I'm looking at here, and it's mainly to do because of the schedule, but it's really interesting to talk about, is Wisconsin. Their over-under right now is 5.5. And granted, they play Illinois, Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Iowa, Michigan, and then they have their non-con against Bama. I mean, what happens if Luke Fickell goes 5-7 this year, right? And that's a guy that a lot of people here in Nebraska, were interested in hiring as their head coach, who was hired during the same process as Matt Rule. I wonder I would just love to know what Wisconsin, that athletic department, is thinking, because you could make hey, you just haven't won enough here for us to, justify you having another year. We clearly tried doing something new. We have to pivot. We got to go back to what we were doing before, because clearly it was working better than when you showed up here. At the same time,
you mean with a individual or
with Fickell,
their style? You say Fickell out.
Yes. And go ahead and you look at it, or you can make the excuse of, man, that was a really tough schedule. There aren't a lot of coaches who would have been able to coach through that. Actually, the fact that you won 6 games is impressive enough. We're going to give you another year, but next year you got to be better. I think it's a fascinating discussion with Wisconsin, because I don't necessarily think they're going to be a bad team, and I like the addition. I like Billy Edwards Jr. a lot, and I think that he could, be an impact player for them at quarterback. But it is a daunting task they have this season.
I would think getting to 7 wins at Wisconsin this year would be a feat for that group.
That would be a big win for them, which is crazy to talk about. But I mean, this schedule, this 4-week stretch.
Well, they got 3 playoff teams on their schedule. That's enough.
This 4-week stretch at Ann Arbor, home against Iowa, home against Ohio State, at Oregon. That is crazy.
Well, and then they got Michigan and Illinois on that schedule as well.
Yeah, and by the way, no bye weeks too during that. That is back-to-back games.
Fickell did an interview. I think it was with The Athletic. He was pretty honest about where the program was and the mistakes he made. in his first 2 years. But welcome. Your win total is 5.5, and you're looking at that schedule where before you even get into the meat and potatoes of the Big Ten schedule, you got to play Alabama. Iowa JD tweets. He says, I can bet Wisconsin radio shows are saying the same thing about Nebraska. Nebraska's schedule is not like that.
No, not daunting. I think they were saying the same things about, hey, they're probably saying the opposite, right? I mean, they're saying if Matt Rule doesn't win this amount of games
can we get Houston
with
Christian?
This week's schedule, then that might be grounds for him to get let go. That's probably what they're saying. That's not what I'm saying.
You are a year 3 gotta go guy. You're pretty passionate about that.
I'm a year. Well, I need to see. I need to see more
I
than
don't
just
wanna
a
go through this
one-win
again.
progress. Like I want to see an actual jump. I want to see actual like.
What was
player
your?
development.
You said if Rule goes 6-6, you should be fired.
Should be and will be is a different thing, but should be, yeah. There should be is what are we doing here, right? Like 6-6, you have the 5-star quarterback. You've had 3 years to not only just bring in your own high school recruits, but develop those high school recruits. And then on top of that, with the use of the portal, the tool of the portal, we've seen plenty of other teams who have been able to dip in there, grab guys, not only that are mercenaries, but develop them as well and have instant success. And, I'm an advocate for giving coaches a little bit more time, more so than pulling the plug quickly. At the same time, though, like the amount of resources and money and the flexibility that he's been able to have and the fact that he's been able to fully control this program the way he has, if they go 6-6, my question is, how does this get better? Like, what else more do you need to get this program to where it should be? So that's how I look at it. But I wouldn't call.
I think they're anywhere from 6 wins to 9 wins, by the way, this season.
I'm in the same boat. I'm in the same exact boat, but at this point right now, after this spring, I think I'm more leaning towards the left side of that as opposed to the right side. But
so more towards
6-7, 6-6, or 7-5, in my opinion. That's kind of where I see it right now. But yeah, I'm a year 3 guy because that's.
So let me ask you this.
That's what we've been preaching. So, that's what we've been saying. That's part of the reason why you.
So if they were 6-6 this year, something major had to have happened, like injuries, and they were decimated.
Yes.
What? So after spring, you've gone closer to 6-6.
Just based on the reports and just based on what I've heard and based on the injury to Jalen George, this interior defensive line needs to play well, needs to do well. They are not only just young and don't have a ton of production, but they are filling the shoes of guys who arguably were your 2 best players last year. And I wanted to end the spring hearing about and people raving about the interior defensive line. I wanted people to say, man, Cam Lenhart has taken a jump. Keanu Davis looks absolutely incredible. Man, Williams Winery, he looks like the next Randy Gregory. That's what I wanted to hear. And I haven't heard that, right? And so now I haven't heard like, oh my God, they're terrible. This is going to be awful or anything like that. But I'm very worried about that interior. And I'm very worried about their pass rush and the fact that we went throughout an entire spring and those weren't really the sentiments that we were hearing. Yeah, that kind of shifted me a little bit toward more 7-5 than it did toward 9-3. But they had the schedule to go 9-3.
That'd be a long 2025 season reaction. It wouldn't be over. It'd be reaction if Nebraska was 6-6 or 7-5.
Well, and isn't it incredible though the difference that one game makes, right? Because if we're 7-5,
I think not one game. I think there's 4 games. That's why if you're in the window of 6 to 9, the 4 road games are mammoth. Maryland, Minnesota, Penn State, UCLA.
I just think that it's incredible, though, that we go, man, if they're 7-5, we're going to have a long reactions worth of football. But if they win one more game, if they're 8-4, you win one more game, and we're like, man, hey, they're going in the right direction. Maybe they didn't take as big as a jump as we were hoping, but we're definitely climbing up the hill. There's definitely things to look forward to. Maybe last year we were a year away, and we end up, we won 8 games, and this is the year we pivot. And then you go 7-5 though, and you're like, man, what are we doing? Like that one game. I think that swing game, there is a world for sure where they just lose to Minnesota. I think that swing game could be Maryland.
You
the
volunteering
at
him for
Maryland game.
overreaction.
I think that one game that could swing the season is at Maryland.
I've said 2 games will tell me more than the Michigan game, and that's the first game of the year and the trip to Minnesota.
I think that
if you're gauging progress,
sure.
Like
that
Nebraska
game,
in the past, they don't win those games. They have preseason hype. They play a team that they're going to be a touchdown favorite. Everybody's expecting them to win. What do? They lay an egg. Then you go to a place where Minnesota's owned you. Okay, Minnesota has beat you. Minnesota is perceived in 2025 not to be on the level of Nebraska, but over the course of time, Minnesota just wins. And it's a place where you don't win. And it's a place that's sent guys to the league more than you have.
Yeah.
And you want to make fun of their head coach, but you're like, damn, he wins. So to go on the road, where I think the road is where you judge this team. If you win a game like that, I'm like, okay, things are different compared to the previous years.
How much better would it be going into that Minnesota game, coming off of a win against Maryland, as opposed to coming off a loss? There is a world if you want to live in that world where if Nebraska gets on a roll and they learn how to stack success, which is still my hesitation until I see it, they could be unbeaten going to Minnesota. Or they could be on a 3-game losing streak.
So Michigan
State, and
then Maryland.
There's a world. We've seen it before. Enjoy
those shows.
I know.
All right, quick break. Come back. Top of the hour. John Walker stops by at 1620 The Zone. How did we hear any of the backstory from last night of how Buddy Hield was wearing the wrong shorts? That they had to pull him out of the game. He had to go back to the locker room and change his shorts.
I didn't hear the backstory, but man, that happens a lot more than you think.
Shout out Doug Gottlieb.
If Buddy's a guy that
good call,
wears shorts correctly.
If Buddy is a guy that doesn't have the cleanest locker, I can see how if you just open up the bin and you're like looking, I need yellow shorts or I need this color shorts, how he could just easily pick out the wrong one and then put them on. Like as someone who has a pretty dirty closet, I can see how you mean to grab one thing and then you grab the other and you're like, oh, okay. I think this is like today. I definitely meant to grab sweatpants and I'm wearing shorts, but I was like, I got to get out the door. This is what we're rolling with. I think that's what Buddy was probably,
with the shorts.
Were they
his pregame
shorts? Yeah, like so they were not like the wrong uniform shorts because the equipment manager wouldn't put the wrong shorts in his locker. He just didn't change from when he came out to shoot before the game, and so they asked him to go back. You know what he has done the last 2 games?
Save that team.
Well, he has reminded people along with that. He has reminded people of how friggin' good he was at Oklahoma.
He stood on a scores table right in front of me once after he had a half-court shot that should have counted.
That's cool.
That picture. So I played pickup basketball at Buddy's house. That picture.
That's a flex. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. That was last season. I remember.
That's dating back to like the Edgerrin James story of like, I was hanging out with Edge.
So Omaha is playing at TCU.
Yeah.
And we did a back in the Metroplex when TCU in North Texas.
We were just talking about this at home the other day because I remember.
Chris Crutchfield, who was the #1 assistant under Lon Kruger, who recruited Buddy Hield and Trey Young to OU. Buddy lives in Dallas. He last year was playing for the Pacers, so he was out of town. And he said, why don't you guys come to my house and you can practice?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So he has a little... It looks like you drive into his garage, but he has an 84-foot basketball gym. Wow. And so we went and practiced there and shot. And at one end, that famous shot that he jumped up on the scores table that Jimmy was alluding to is a huge picture on one wall.
Yeah, I'm in one of these.
It was You would never know it, though. And now it was a really, really nice neighborhood, of course, in Dallas. You would never know it pulling up that you're about to walk into this gym in the guy's house.
Like it just pops up out of nowhere?
Well, it looks like the garage. It looks like his garage.
Oh.
And then you go through a door and you're like, oh my God, they got an 84-foot basketball floor. But yeah, Chris Crutchfield recruited Buddy Hield from the Bahamas to OU, and then he got Trey Young. And it's cool to see Buddy Hield doing Buddy Hield things. But if Steph Curry is out, they're in trouble. I know that they played well on defense, and they can play 3 guards on defense. And they throw in Draymond.
Yeah, but and then they have him run the point, and it has. I'll say this:
like Pat Spencer. The Timberwolves aren't today going, you know what? If we can win the minutes when Pat Spencer isn't playing, we'll be good.
Well, I look at like Draymond running the point immediately after Steph got hurt, and I go, this is like an offensive coordinator in football with a gimmick offense, where it's like. In a way, it's like, oh, okay, Draymond's running the point. Like, they haven't seen this before. I guarantee you when Chris Finch and the staff, get to the tape, they're going to be like, all right, if they go with this stuff again, we're going to go ahead and stuff them, But, hey.
And Jimmy Butler isn't looking to score.
No, he's looking
That was weird last night.
Well, look, Buddy
Hield. He also got booed. Boo on Minnesota fans for booing him.
He should be booed. But shout out Vivek Ranadive, who is the owner of the Sacramento Kings, who is getting proven right.
This I want to hear.
Well, when he traded for Buddy Hield,
Mister, I want to be like the Spurs, but exciting. How'd that work out for you, Vivek?
He called him the next. Why don't you like Vivek?
I just said he once had a quote about 11 years ago saying, "We want to be like the Spurs, only exciting." Wow. A year ago, they made him, or a year later, they made him look stupid, and today he looks even more stupid with no championships. But continue.
But no, Vivek called Buddy Hield the next Steph Curry, and that just never came to fruition until Buddy was no longer on the Sacramento Kings. So shout out Buddy, and then shout out Vivek. Hey, bud, you were a couple years early. You're a couple years early.
Wait, he's wrong again? Okay, yeah, I'm with you now. We're on the same page.
He was ahead of the curve,
moron.
But he saw it in Buddy. Vivek's a great scout. If Vivek is listening to this, he should keep scouting. He should keep drafting all the Sacramento players.
Yeah.
One less team to worry
Keep
about.
on doing that. Yep.
I don't mean to crap on the Beam team, but
no, we're not.
I'm not responding.
I'm actually advocating
because
for the
I'm not a
team.
fan of our. I'm not a fan of our owner. Mm-hmm. But BJ Armstrong, by the way, is going to be our assistant GM. Hey. They hired him yesterday. I love BJ Armstrong when I was a little kid. Buddy Hield also. So now the NBA is getting Oklahoma Buddy. He was involved in, I think, one of the top 10 greatest regular season games in the history of college basketball.
I remember that very well.
Were you at this game, Jimmy?
I was at that game. I was working. And I didn't leave it early to get stuck on K10. I was like, we're staying for this whole game. I'm even going to go to the post-game press conference.
You remember this game? Number one versus number two?
I didn't want it to end.
Big Monday?
I mean, I remember it was a great game. I don't remember too many memories of it. I know that people have talked about it before. 3 overtimes. And Buddy Hield at Allen Fieldhouse goes off for 46.
It reminded me of Bird Dominique.
KU won 109-106.
Seriously, didn't want it to end.
Perry Ellis had a big night, if I remember.
It was his 14th year there. Hell yeah.
You could say that about a lot of games between the years of 2011 and
the night Collison got a standing O from Dickie V. Perry Ellis was huge in that game.
It was, you could, like, if you're like talking to
Duke
someone
in the Final
and
Four
you're
in 88
with them, and you're like, oh yeah, in 2014 I went to Allen Fieldhouse and I saw them play West Virginia. You could just say, didn't Perry Ellis have a big game? And they would be like, yeah, he did have a big game.
Wilt Chamberlain actually used to do an
cool
air shift at the radio station, and Perry was his understudy. For I think it was called Spinning with Uncle Dippy. Something like that. Spinning with the Dipper or something.
We've proven that Wilt Chamberlain didn't do what he claimed he did, right?
Have a on-air shift at a Lawrence radio station?
Off the floor. I mean, that's impossible.
If he did, it's amazing because he didn't have that many kids.
I know, which is exactly why.
Flaky Jake, who is celebrating the Dubs win last night. Steve Kerr's done a hell of a job the last 2 games. But they might be without Steph for a while. Oklahoma Buddy. Oh, that was awesome, though. I've heard you tell a story, but I never knew it was Buddy's house you guys went to. But yeah, if no Steph, Dubs lose. Whoa, losing 5, maybe 6. It's so sad. I've told you what's going to happen. Steph will be out until game 6. Wolves will be up 3-2. Steph will come back.
One last
we will write another chapter on the legacy of Steph Curry. But that was a downer last night when he went out. I was like, do I want to watch this game anymore?
Well, I'll say this. Golden State.
I was sad.
Golden State's defense yesterday was actually really impressive. I mean, their help defense within the paint, they were able to kind of switch, like they would almost run the Minnesota Timberwolves off that 3-point line, lead them into 2 different defenders.
No. They wanted to run him to the 3-point line.
Well, Kerr was saying in the huddle, he was like, run him off the line and then let him sink into our help defense right in the paint. They did that a couple times. I mean, Anthony Edwards missed like 4 or 5 layups in that first half easily. And Draymond Green and Kevon Looney, they make quite the duo.
Well, you can play 3. So when you have a guy like Draymond Green, you can play 3 guards. You can play a small lineup. They do a great job of beating teams to the spot.
Yes.
So they get to the spot that you want before you do, and then they funnel you into the rest of the defense. Steve Kerr, he's done well the last 2 games.
One of his best jobs.
Now, how do you think this individual celebrates today? And maybe celebrates the wrong word. What do you think Craig Elo does today?
So goes to this empty lot where once an arena stood and just
go home, mother, go home.
So 38 years ago today. This is a big day for like past basketball moments because this is also the date in 2002 that Iverson has the press conference talking about practice. But 38 years ago today, Michael Jordan decided, you know what? I would like to grab point 43 and 44 and hit the game-winning shot in Richfield, Ohio.
Rest in peace, Coliseum.
Which was in the middle of nowhere.
Hard to get to.
Now that whole area, because it was way outside of downtown Cleveland, that whole area has been developed. And the arena has been torn down, but it was in the middle of nowhere. But the Cavs were pretty good. I mean, we're the Larry Nance, Craig Elo days. And then Michael Jordan, on this date 38 years ago.
Should have had Ron Harper on him.
Hits the shot over Craig Elo.
Who put him ahead before with a really good play that Lenny drew up.
So I wanted Craig Elo, I think he still is the analyst for the Washington State Radio Network for men's basketball.
Probably for the best that he's there.
Met him in a Washington State game, and
You wanted to ask him. Oh.
He was standing there, and he looks a little bit different now. He got longer hair, and he had a beard, and he was, he's talking ball and talking about Washington State. All I could think about is, God, do I ask the question? I mean, that's all you're known for.
How was it when the greatest player of all time was careening over you and ended your season?
Everywhere you go, like in airports or in Pac-12 arenas,
I grew
they're
up.
going to go, there goes Craig Elo.
By the way, Craig Elo played 14 years.
Oh, and
he's a good player.
I know that's why he's known for one play.
He is one of the more underrated, he's a true role player, right? Like the guy.
He was one of the really damn good players of those Cleveland teams.
Yeah, averaged eight points a game, multiple teams. He's the type of player where in the offseason, you're like, man, we could really use a guy
NBA
like Craig
finalist
Elo,
with the 86 Rockets.
And yet you look at him and immediately everybody thinks the same thing. I feel bad for Nick Anderson. Right.
Yeah.
And that's another guy.
Hey, just missed another free throw.
Exactly. Who had a really good career, and a historic player for the Orlando Magic. And all you can think about is, wow, you missed 4 free throws. You're a guard. You're a good free throw shooter. And you missed back-to-back free throws. That's tough.
That voodoo magic the Rockets had that year. That's why Charles Barkley missed 2 up 92-90 in Game 5 of the second round when they could have put it away. Went to overtime, lost in 7, kiss of death, all that stuff.
Well, it is. You think about in the history of sports, because now I'm popping in my head
of one play guys
like Jim Marshall.
He ran the wrong way,
but
even though he played 19 years and was really
Jim
damn
Marshall
good.
Had an incredible career, in the NFL. But he will always be known as the guy that ran the wrong way.
Well, we're missing the biggest one. I mean,
that's just he's on the list.
Oh yeah, I mean Buckner. I mean, that is the
Bill
classic.
Buckner was a damn good baseball.
Well, most recently, the Ravens have a pretty good tight end who's had a nice career. He's not in the category of the Kittle or Kelsey, but Mark Andrews is going to be known for one play.
Felt sick for him. Yeah,
he's going to be known for one play of dropping a pass against the Bills in the playoffs this past season.
Well, how many here's a team one, right? That 2017 Houston Rockets team, right? Every player on that team, you're just going to remember, he was a part of the team that missed 27 straight threes.
Oh, it's a beautiful night.
In a
win or go home. Team.
Hey, you could upset one of the best teams of all time, and you're a 3-point shooting team who literally all year to get to that point just knock down threes.
That's going to be on James'
the
epitaph when
roster.
he's retire.
I think of like when I go with PJ, if I ever met PJ Tucker, I'd be like, man, you hit that corner 3 all season long. How could you needed to hit 2, and you guys were going to win that game.
Sure, that conversation will go well.
Here's another
Scott
one too.
Norwood.
And I know we're still sticking to baseball here, but Moises Alou is another guy compared to Elo, who had a really, really solid baseball career, played so many different games on a couple
loved him
different
with the
teams.
Astros, loved him with the Cubs.
And we're all just going to remember the fact that a fan interfered with him and he lost his stuff. That's sports, man. It's one play.
Tantrums. Yep.
One play makes you. One play could break you.
They're the one-hit wonders.
Yeah.
Des caught that ball.
May 7th, 1989.
Des caught it.
And then 6 years later on the same day.
Did you see that video of that guy walking around asking?
Des Bryant, by the way, is on Twitter this morning talking about George Pickens.
It? He's in his era now of old head where he's not officially a part of the
media. I've only seen him come across my timeline. Is he crushing George Pickens?
He's been beefing with wide receivers probably the last 18 months. And then eventually you'll see a Des Bryant workout video where you're like, oh my God, he still got it. But then no one.
And yet he's not with the Cowboys.
Yeah. But they asked Green Bay Packers fans, hey, are you a casual or diehard Green Bay Packer fan? And there's 15 of them. They're like, I'm a diehard Green Bay Packer fan.
So you know who Anthony Dilweg is?
No, they go, no, even better, Jimmy. They go, what college did Jordan Love play for? And none of them knew. None of them knew. Utah State, man. What are we doing here? What are you doing?
But we know ball.
It's your quarterback. It's my quarterback.
Mike throws in a couple. Earmuffs. Jackie Smith.
There was a hole in my grandmother's house. That's what they told me. This was before my time.
Didn't Jackie Smith, the tight end for the Cowboys, have
He was a Hall of Fame. Yeah, Hall of Fame career. There's the video after the NFC Championship game. They beat the Rams by a lot. That one of the players is saying, Jackie's going to a Super Bowl after how many? 17 years. Mm-hmm. And then that one play, bless his heart, he was the sickest man in America, Uncle Vern. He did slip.
Does Romo fall in the category
of what?
Of this because of the muffed holding the field goal?
Oh,
or is that not as memorable? Is that not really
memorable to me?
Yeah, it probably doesn't get the national run.
Yeah, I remember.
that
I
we
was
think
your
of all
age.
these
That
other-
was
Well, you
not
have
a good
to.
night.
He
He had so many other moments after that. Not good.
That was what Tony did. It was hard to.
Okay, Chris Webber. So Chris Webber has his numbers retired at the Dean Dome for his time out in the North Carolina-Michigan championship game, but did his, he had a pretty stellar career. Did it supersede that one college play? That's kind of like the Romo thing. Did the rest of Romo's Cowboy career, supersede
Funny
a play where he was the holder?
Funny enough, I think Chris Webber
I don't really think
media helped him a lot too. Like I think Chris Webber being on TNT and being a fill-in for that show and having his being in the spotlight, and then you had so many other
those Kings teams. That's what did it.
Well, the Kings teams, but I do think that
conspiracy
anytime
about the Lakers when they lost in the Western Conference Finals
Seriously,
to them.
Mike Bibby got a foul for getting elbowed in the nose.
They got screwed over in that. But Chris Webber has been helped by being in media and having all of these NBA players sing his praises about how incredible he was, and I think that has helped him overcome that in a way.
A couple of others here. Mark Sanchez.
Butt fumble.
He's known for one play.
Yeah. But Mark Sanchez wasn't that good. He was okay.
Still, he says his name, butt fumble.
Didn't he almost get to the Super Bowl?
He did.
He was one game away.
Here's one. Gary Anderson.
Oh. I'm not a Vikings fan, and I still feel for them. That dude hadn't missed anything. And the great Pat Summerall says he had not missed all year right before he missed. So anybody could have the jinx, including legends.
All right, John Walker from the World Herald coming up in the next hour. Brandon Vogel as well. And Gary and Matt, 1620 The Zone. Yeah, shout out. I'm a big fan of what he has done at Omaha Central. Ike Ackerman was a dominating rush edge, or an edge rusher, excuse me, for Central past fall in his last year. He's headed to Ohio to play football. Broke the Class A shot put record yesterday over at the newly opened Omaha Burke Stadium again. They'd shut it down to redo the track to get ready for state track and field. They redid the track, the stands, the press box. Stu Pospisil will tell you that the press box is not completely finished, but the Metro track meet yesterday broke the Class A shot put record, 65 feet, 8 3/4 inches. He's somebody to put on your radar.
Okay.
Mixed Sportsbook.
Okay.
Because Ike is, 6'4", 240. He's going to Ohio to play. He's one of those guys that I could see go and dominate in the MAC and have an opportunity to move up and play Power 4 football. I'm happy for him. He's a good kid, good family, and I think that record has been in place for a long time.
So I saw the video
which
yesterday.
Might even be his record that he broke.
He launched that thing. I mean, that thing was absolutely. And so I did track and field, and I have like joked around with the throwers before, and I've picked up that ball like, oh, let me see how far I can throw. You get humbled quickly holding that thing, because when those big guys are holding that ball, you're like, like that doesn't seem too hard. You're just throwing a ball, and then it's like literally like 5-6 pounds in your hand, and it's like you're getting it up in your shoulder. You're like, dude, I'm gonna rip my shoulder out my socket if I don't do this properly. I mean, it was incredible watching that video. I watched it over and over and over again. Something. He'll
be somebody that will go to Ohio and will do work, and in a couple of years will be in the portal and will be somebody who will make a nice little bag. But
see, that's a nice thing about NIL, man. Like there's stories like that, and there's the opportunities to do that. And for all of the
when you feel like you're under recruited, I mean, he had Air Force offered him, a couple of FCS schools. We would say on the TV broadcast, man, somebody's got to have an offer that is above an Ohio or a Kent State. But good pickup at Ohio. I believe that he committed to Ohio before Tim Albin left and stuck with his commitment. But that'll be fun to watch him and what he does in the state track and field championships, which are in 2 weeks. John Walker from the World Herald will join us next. We'll talk some Creighton basketball. We'll talk some Creighton baseball, who win the season series for the 6th straight year over Nebraska. And now we're on to the Musketeers. That's a big series downtown this weekend for a team that is ahead of Kraton in the RPI, but not ahead of them in the standings. We'll do all that when we come back on 1620 The Zone. All right, our next guest is, I'm going to say, the only journalist in America that has a beat that has this unique element. John Walker for the Omaha World-Herald, the fantastic Creighton beat writer, is the only guy in America that covers two programs that have a coach in waiting.
Wow.
Men's basketball and baseball. Good morning, my friend.
Good morning. Yeah, it's not often that you see a school have one of those situations, let alone two. So, yeah, I think that's pretty fair to say that Creighton's probably the only school in the country with that. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing great.
So 32-13, win the series against Nebraska, go into the weekend, and the last two weekends with a chance to win the regular season title. How has the dynamic worked, you think, between Ed Service and then Mark Kingston being in the dugout waiting for Ed to retire and take over next year?
Yeah, it's been pretty clear from the onset, guys, from the time that we talked to Mark Kingston for the first time last summer, all the way through now, that Kingston did not want to come in and step on Ed Service's toes in his retirement tour. And that's kind of been that. They've worked together, obviously. But like it's pretty clear that Kingston and the guys that he brought in last summer are here to supplement Ed Service and do whatever Ed Service wants them, needs them to do, on his way out. And it's worked. It really has, in large part because of a pitching staff that has delivered top to bottom. Which just seems so fitting that that's how this team would be where it's at, is with its arms, with its defense, which anyone who's followed Creighton baseball forever, especially the past 23 seasons, knows that is Ed Service's MO. So that's kind of how the dynamic worked. They've coexisted, probably waters it down a little bit. That probably makes it sound like there's animosity there. There's not. But for lack of a better word, they've coexisted in a sense that has worked this season. And, kind of in the same vein as basketball will in the next couple of years, has allowed the people in the program to get used to Kingston and the guys that he brought in to make for a seamless transition this offseason.
When they go to Ohio to the Big East tournament, what would be your biggest concern for this Creighton baseball team?
Yeah, just that the pitching staff, they'd have to throw more arms than they wanted to early, and it would deplete the pitching staff when because there you're treating it like the postseason. I mean, it is the postseason. You're trying to just win one game at a time, and to do that, let's say you're in a really hotly contested back and forth battle in game one that requires 6 pitchers. Okay, well, that means you might not have Garrett Langrell for the next day, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
So that'd be the concern. I think it's a pretty thorough lineup. The lineup is what it is at this point. We know what to expect from a lot of these guys. But the pitching staff is obviously the biggest concern, not because I'm concerned about the arms, but because the arms have gotten Creighton this far. And so if that kind of unravels in the Big East tournament, you're just asking for trouble.
Let's keep in with the transition with a coach in waiting. And, Ed, for 22 years, he's got a chance to go to the NCAA tournament. Then we shift over to basketball. And I thought it was, you could tell that two guys that enjoyed being around each other, and Mac kind of handpicking Allen the other day, and those two speaking. What does it say to you about the transition? Because it's not easy. I mean, we've seen some coach in waitings that have not worked out. But the fact that one of the assistants will actually be somebody that worked for Allen at High Point last year, and Mac is like, we're good.
Yeah.
We're good. I may not know you really well. You may not fit all the boxes that I like in my assistants, but if Allen vouches for you, it's a great start for when he takes over. What does that say to you about what's to come in the next year, but also about Mac and how he's handling this.
Yeah, I think Mac is kind of, welcomed it with open arms. I mean, it was his idea, right?
Yeah.
It'd be foolish for him to pitch the idea and then to be closed off to it. I think that he realized he was, essentially asking Alan Huss to go out on a limb. Not in the long term, sure, but in the immediate future, certainly. Because he was a head coach. And Alan Huss said, when we talked to him on Monday, it was really hard to leave because I'm sitting there looking at next year's roster and I'm looking at 32, 33 wins. So it was really hard to leave. And obviously Alan Huss I know that he will eventually be the head coach at Creighton, but in the immediate, he went from being a head coach who just made the NCAA tournament to being an assistant again, being an associate head coach again. And he went out on a limb in that regard, and Greg McDermott kind of compensated him for it, if that makes any sense, by saying, hey, you can bring a guy with you. We have an open spot. We can have, I think NCAA legislation passed this offseason that you can have an extra guy out on the road recruiting. So that's he said, hey, you can bring a guy with you from High Point. And that was a really tough choice for Alan Huss to make because he had a former Kraton guy sitting right there on the bench with Corey Edwards. So that's kind of how I saw that was one, Mike Nesbitt is a really good recruiter. He helped Alan Huss in that regard in their 2 seasons at High Point. I think he played for Alan Huss at La Lumiere when Huss was coaching high school ball. It's just kind of a perfect marriage between Alan Huss eventually getting what he wants and Greg McDermott getting what he wants out of his last few seasons at Creighton.
Coach McDermott was very open and candid with the NIL/rev share situation with when it comes to his team, talking about how, we got to make sure that, the Blue Jays stay in the middle to upper middle of the Big East when it comes to spending dollars. What do you take away from him being so open about what the current financials of the teams are? And is there any reading between the lines that you can do from those comments?
Yeah, I don't know if you can mention honest and candid when it comes to a private school talking about NIL.
Sure. Good point. Good point.
But as open as Mac was on Monday was exactly right. Like he knows that Creighton is not going to be the top spender in the Big East when it comes to basketball because UConn is a publicly funded university. Right. So they have extra money coming in. Furthermore, they have a good sized alumni base because it's a public school. So there's more connections, more resources. Obviously, we all know that St. John's has, a blank check for the most part. And then there's kind of we can jockey for this and this and this. And that's kind of where I think Mac was coming from in the, it seems like it was kind of, I'm good enough coach. Huss will eventually be a good enough coach when he takes over. We just need at least middle of the Big East resources. And from everyone I've talked to, from the all-season signings they made this year, it seems like that's right where they are. Because I don't think that they drained the pockets going and getting all of these guys, right? But it certainly was a pretty penny to go get 2 of the top players in the portal with Owen Freeman and Josh Dix. Especially when you consider against some of the other schools those guys considered or schools that pursued both of those guys, and then everyone else behind them too. But no, I thought that was good for Mac to come out and say it because there's so much uncertainty when it comes to NIL, when it comes to rev share. Especially guys, as you know, when we start talking about the Big East, because UConn is the only member of the Big East that's not a private school. So all of this is kind of in the dark. Like, you're not going to get a coach or an AD to come out and say, yeah, we have this much to work with. Not going to happen. And so it was good to hear Mac, be open about, hey, if we can at least be, middle to upper middle of the pack in the Big East, we'll be okay.
And he has such a great relationship with the Bird Club, and their communication is top notch, which helps. But sticking with that, and your personal opinion, or for people you talk to, either on the Hilltop or around the Big East, what's the general feeling about the NIL era in college basketball and building a roster when you have a guy that single-handedly, because he's a billionaire, Mike Rapoli at St. John's, is basically paying for St. John's roster, which they again spent a lot of money in the offseason.
Mm-hmm. Just what do you make of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts. It really is. But that's kind of where we are. And Mac hit it on the head on Monday too, which we all kind of already knew. When it came to the Big East, there was a lot of hubbub made about the Big East having this much to spend and this much to spend, and they can outspend every conference. And in some situations that might be true. But as Max said Monday, they also don't have football money coming in. So we could go down the rabbit hole, and maybe once the House settlement is officially approved, we will. But I think it will. Here's what I've said, that the Big East will, in the immediate future, have a huge advantage because, like it or not, it's a football world. Like conference realignment didn't happen because of basketball. I can tell you that right now. And so you're going to have all of these football schools dumping their money into that. At the same time, while Big East schools won't have football money coming in, they'll be able to allocate, more money in the lump sum to basketball than these football schools can, in theory. Is that actually how it'll play out? I'm not sure, but let's say it is, and the Big East schools get a boost. You see a team like DePaul spend on a similar level to, a middle-level ACC team just because of the Big East to football money in a power conference thing. And then here's what I think eventually happens is in 4 or 5 years, maybe sooner, I don't know, but I think it'll take about 4 or 5 years for these power conference schools to realize, hey, we've got to raise the cap here, or we've got to change something, because they're not going to like that. They're not going to like that basketball schools, non-traditionally football schools, are getting a leg up on basketball. They're not going to like that.
Greg Sankey on line one.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I think eventually happens. Is the Big East gets a boost in the immediate future, especially schools that are willing to dish it out, like St. John's and UConn, which, and then in a handful of years or so, one of those power conference members complains about it enough to where we get another wave of change.
Well, so sticking on this topic of money, Heather Dinich of ESPN was on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, and in her short interview, had quite a lot to say about the current state of college sports. And she brought up that, look, there's a lot of money, and particularly in football, being spent right now where you have $25-40 million rosters. And she brought up hey, there could be a bubble being popped here. There could be a crash coming. There could be donor fatigue on the way. John Walker, what would a crash in college football look like? What would a financial bubble pop look like in college sports?
I'm so glad you asked this. So when I was down covering Oklahoma State and Stillwater, I also did radio a few times a week.
Okay.
And I remember them asking me this as far back as then. And I'll say the same thing now that I said, which would have been 2 years ago at this point. It was right around the time that the Big 12 expanded, and they went and got the 4 corner schools with Utah and Arizona State, Colorado and Arizona. I think that football eventually separates as an entity. Yeah. I do not think college football will be controlled by the NCAA, because I don't think that the NCAA can continue to make decisions based on football, and those decisions disregard the impact on every other sport. For example, you could have football. Let's use Nebraska. Okay. Nebraska football would be in this 64-team super league that's broken down into divisions, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say it's controlled by the college football playoff, whatever you want to call it. We'll insert entity name. Nebraska, in this scenario, could still be in the Midwest region when it comes to football,
mm-hmm.
and the Huskers could still be in the Big Ten as it pertains to everything else. Mm-hmm. That's what I think eventually happens, because it's just not fair to make a football decision with the domino effect of sending UCLA women's soccer all the way to Rutgers.
Yeah,
that's that program's travel budget for the entire year.
Yep.
And yeah, that's solely a football decision. So that's what I think happens. I think the bubble bursting is when these schools say, okay, well, we want the cap raise, we want the cap raise, we want the cap raised, and then there kind of starts your natural divide. Is you'll have some schools that don't want to do it, and some schools, the SEC, the Big Ten, that are absolutely positively in favor of spending more money. And then you'll separate off into, again, 64, let's say, power conference teams in this super football league. All of them would be willing to spend money, obviously.
Yeah. And
it wouldn't affect all the other sports or all the other schools. So that's what I think happens.
I like your thinking. Hey, we'll get you out here on this. So once the calendar flipped to 2025 and you're home away from home being downtown in the Chi, you've got Creighton UConn in that building. You've got Creighton's win over Marquette. Does Monday Night at Raw top any of those that you've seen in that building in 2025?
Okay, yeah. So it was good, man. It was good, and I recorded the main event on my phone, and I went with my girlfriend and my sister and my 11-year-old nephew, and we had a time. And you can hear me and my girlfriend just going crazy in the back.
That's awesome.
When they kept kicking out, and when like Sami Zayn and CM Punk came out. So no, it was fun. Where it ranks for a Creighton game?
Come on, I mean, it's got to be up there. Punk return, Sheamus return.
It's up there for sure. It's up there, but I don't know.
I mean, Paul Heyman dropped the legacy promo that people are still talking about.
I don't know if it can top a Creighton game.
Okay.
I don't know if it can have the top spot, because no Cody Rhodes, no John Cena, no Roman Reigns. That would have solidified it as a topper for me.
Okay.
But it was okay, I'd say.
Fantastic. John, as always, appreciate it. Have a great week and a weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.
John Walker of the Omaha World Herald. All right, so who cut a better promo in 2025 in that building? Paul Heyman or Dan Hurley?
Oh, Dan Hurley. Because Paul Heyman didn't walk out a winner. All right, Paul Heyman was the loser of the night. I think Dan Hurley, 2 rings, short, sweet, to the point, baby. 2 rings.
When we come back, question that Matt asked John in the discussion about the bubble bursting. The Big Ten revealed their financials yesterday.
Jeez.
Damn, it is good to be in the Big Ten. It's good to be in the SEC, and I don't know how the other 2 quote-unquote power conferences survive. That gap is getting wider and wider. The Big Ten made a lot of money in the last year of Kevin Warren, who also made a lot of money before he went to the Bears. We'll get into that. Brandon Vogel coming up in about 20 minutes as well. 1620 The Zone.
Hey, 1620 The Zone is partnering up with Wellbeing Partners in the Celebrate Your Wellbeing Photo Contest. Submit a photo on how you focus on your well-being and practice self-care. Share your story online at 1620thezone.com.
All right, the Big Ten is healthy.
Very
really healthy. So Big Ten revenue soared to $928 million for the 24 fiscal year. $928 million. Even with expenses, the Big Ten came out on the plus side. $213 million they made on the plus side. So Rutgers and Maryland don't get the full share.
Yeah.
Nebraska got $63 million.
Jeez.
Those two schools, this is the last year of the 14, is they got $61.5 million. That's such a drop-off not to get $2 million. So the conference is extremely happy and healthy. They expect this to go in the next fiscal year, $1 billion. For the Big Ten, revenue soar to $1 billion.
Crazy.
Big Ten schools budget $75 million. That is their budget because they know they're going to get the TV money. But question you asked that I think is fair, because we wonder, is it ever going to burst? The TV money appears to get larger and larger, but will it ever burst, and what that looks like? Because if it does burst, there is going to be a lot of people that are going to be in trouble, and we keep waiting for that. But you never, you say, oh, is it going to burst? Is it going to burst?
Yeah.
It doesn't. The money just keeps growing with every single deal that is done by either professional leagues or college leagues. And what is it going to look like in 2030, around that time when the new TV deals will start to trickle in again for the Big Ten?
Well, so I think what John said is the most likely outcome of happening, right? In terms of separating the two entities of, hey, football is an entire different sport than everything else that's going around the athletic department. And I think that's the path we're heading. And frankly, I mean, for so long, right, in athletic departments, most of the money that is being made is from football anyway. Football
cash
is
cow.
Exactly. And not only is football
but a cow
getting the most things, but they are providing for so many other sports, right? But
could have a show idea.
I have an idea out there for you. Let me throw this out there.
All right.
So, like I said, the most likely outcome is probably the athletic departments, the football team separating from all the other sports. But let's say this bubble bursts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And players aren't getting paid nearly as much as what they were previously because donor fatigue and just the expenses have gotten too high, and these teams are having a tough time making up the money.
Or an athletic department files for bankruptcy?
Yeah. What happens if a bunch of very wealthy individuals come together and say,
private equity? Is that where we're going?
We're going to make our own
Saudis?
We're going to be separate.
Don't joke.
No, this is where this is going. This is exactly where this is going. What if a conglomerate of people with a lot of money say, hey, you know what? Screw the schools, screw the NCAA. We're making our own league, and we are going to pay. We're going to establish X amount of teams. We're going to pay top coaches to coach those teams. We're going to go ahead. We're going to invest, and we're going to pay the top players more money than what they were making previously before this bubble burst. What if that happened? What if a private equity firm says we're going to put billions of dollars, and we are going to create the true minor league of football, and we're going to establish it in these cities, and we're going to have these people become fans.
So you would.
I think you added
the last part.
You're going to have to phase that in. I think. I don't think you can just plop it down.
I think adding the last part
kills it.
No,
really. So how would you go about that?
You would then. So you'd have no affiliation. There'd be no longer a Nebraska, for example.
That's basically what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that'd be pretty hard to accept.
But
the money would be very easy to accept, and I'm with you. And it's already kind of been rumored, and people with private equity have tried to get involved, and maybe they are involved in some places. I think you got to be careful here we're going to have the Super League of Football. I don't think everybody will want to participate.
No,
and I don't think everybody can.
And John said 64 teams.
Some people will be turned off.
I think there's probably 40.
I don't think there's 64. And especially too, there's 40 to start, right? But what happens if, the cap gets higher and higher and higher, and there are teams that are grasping on for dear life, and they're like, We can't reach that
So
anymore.
let's just say you combine the SEC and the Big Ten. There's 34. Or now, no, there's 36.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then Notre Dame.
But there's not.
But
not
is every
everybody
team,
inside of that 36 can play big boy football.
I don't.
What it's going to take to be competitive.
I don't think
because then you throw in regulation and
well,
kicking people back.
Another thing is that there are teams within the Big Ten and the SEC that benefit from literally just being in the conference, right? Like them.
I want names.
Northwestern is the big benefits so much from just being in the conference because they're not spending all that money and they don't have top resources. But what are they considered? Big Ten football. Hey, come play Big Ten football here at Northwestern. Look at Vanderbilt in the SEC. They benefit from being, hey, come play SEC. That's their best selling point.
This is where 20 years later, eventually 20 years, the whole Texas in the Big 12 model, right? Where Texas wanted more money than other schools because they brought in more?
Yes.
Them again.
I mean, are we going to be fair forever?
Nope.
Or are we going to say there's no reason that Rutgers should get the same amount of money that Ohio State does?
No.
See?
Not at all. And they're going to be...
I'm thinking that, but I don't know there's enough people that are willing to pull the trigger and go,
yet.
All right.
Well,
because then, I mean, honestly, we're down the road. So let's go like 5-10 years down the road. Would it shock you guys if an athletic department, which was poorly run and hadn't gotten cash reserves to be ready for paying players and all the other challenges, has to file bankruptcy?
We can't do this anymore.
No.
I mean, even if you're getting 65, 70 million in TV, you are run so poorly, they're like, all right, what terrible business here.
Well, how many teams too? Okay, so yeah, you get $63 million, but you have a now added $20 million expense that you did not have before. Mm-hmm. So now immediately you're wiping away that money. Yep. And so, yeah, the numbers are getting bigger, but if we're being honest, because you have this $20.5 million that you're expected to spend, you're actually working with a little bit less than you were previously to handle your company. So yeah,
it might be a case where if you are separate from the university, you're in a better spot.
In what way? Like
you're not reliant on the university and and the funding from the university. You are a separate arm like Nebraska.
Now,
and there's more than just Nebraska out there.
You get to the point though of like, so you bring up a great point with the private equity and you can't separate, like you can't take a college football team out of Nebraska and be like Nebraska football doesn't exist anymore, and then expect college football fans could just latch on to a regional team.
You kill it.
So what do you like? What are those private equity people who want to make their own leagues? Like, how do they handle that?
They invest in a super league.
Yeah.
So you invest in the league that has Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Penn State, Oregon.
Yeah.
So I would think then that route would be you invest in the league. So you own the super league.
Sure.
So here's a breakdown of the Big Ten money. The Big Ten could hand out $7 million to all 134 FBS programs.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. They also could hand
the big 134
$50,000 a year to the 18,500 athletes that play football.
That's insane.
That
is crazy.
Again, the Big Ten, $928 million for the 2024 fiscal year, greater than the SEC and much greater than the ACC and the Big 12, which, as we get closer to the next go-around of TV deals with the big boys, I don't know how those two conferences survive. And I can see why people want to get out and they want to join the Big Ten and they want to join the SEC, or they want to because we are at the top of the ACC or the Big 12 and we don't want to share funds. We want to jump into that super league where we all get the same and we're all playing by the same rules and we're big boy football and we have the funds, the passion to match it.
So here's a hypothetical. An idea thrown out there. Okay. You say private equity invest in the league, right? And you have football teams that are separated from the athletic department. What if you started having now true ownership in this college football super league where you go, okay, hey, let's just throw out a random team. Hey, Wisconsin, right? You guys are struggling. You guys aren't spending as much money as these other teams. How about I, as a private investor, I'll give you X amount of $1 billion, and I now own X amount of percent of Wisconsin football. And now I will invest my own money into Wisconsin football. And now, obviously, I get 50% of the revenue from what we now make. What if we start having private ownership to individual teams within the Super League? I think that's
where you're going,
path.
but that would be really, really uncomfortable.
Oh my God, so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So uncomfortable.
I think it would be more, we'll help you build a Super League and we will fund your Super League instead of individuals.
But what's
Colorado?
What would stop an athletic department from
nothing would stop
agreeing to that?
No.
Agreeing to okay, hey, yeah, you get to fund 50% of our football department now, and now we have more money to spend than almost all these other teams, and we can immediately be competitive.
So then would that come with strings that this is what you have to do? If we own half your football program, this is what you have to teach on your campus. This is what you have to, who you have to hire.
Well, now we're talking about,
because if I'm going to spend money, I'm going to want something, right?
We're just.
Don't I get a say in who the coach is?
Well, you do. Oh, no. You own the football team.
Where we're going to play?
Yes, you own it. It's your professional franchise, essentially, that is now under the guise and under, the stewardship of Wisconsin football or a college or whatever. Because that'd be a great, with how much revenue these football teams make, it'd be like owning a football team. And there are plenty of people who would invest in that and try and do that. And I wonder,
it's more realistic nowadays because we're NFL light than it has ever been. And there is more investment in America from Saudi interests that, want to be involved in sports. I mean, look, we have a whole golf league.
Yeah, that's fun.
But what if Wisconsin football became like Live Golf and no one paid attention to it?
But
they only paid attention to it in those big non-conference games.
No, you're in the Super League. You're playing the top teams. And then Wisconsin football all of a sudden is paying the best players, and they are absolutely killing it, and they're making the best hires, and all of a sudden Wisconsin football is the power of college football until another private equity firm with way more money decides to buy Minnesota football, and now PJ Fleck is running the world.
Hey, oil. I've watched Landman, man. Oil money is the way to go. Get yourself some oil money. Hey,
what a hot take.
Hey, president's talking about energy, right?
Southwest Conference
oil
is
money.
all oil money.
Yeah, hey, history has told you that if you want to be good in athletics, you have found a way to get some oil money. Boom, we've solved it.
There you go.
Get rid of the damn wind turbines up and down 80.
I was about to
get some damn oil.
Hey, let's get some pump jacks going. Do we have any pump jacks in Nebraska?
Let's just move to Texas.
I drive down 35. I'm headed towards the exit to go to Stillwater or down to Oklahoma City. I got pump jacks left and right. We got any pump jacks in Nebraska?
I don't even know what a pump jack is. We just got to find more glory holes.
They're the oil derricks.
We should just start digging all over Dodge. I mean, there's potholes anyway there that have already started our progress.
But
we
where
might
will the
as well
bad
just
drivers
finish
go?
the job.
A couple things.
Off the road, thankfully.
We'll do that
Iowa,
anyway.
JD, I'm totally fine with Iowa selling out to the Saudis. So, all money spends the same.
How would fans feel? Like how would fans feel
especially if they said, you know what, we're going to donate to Nebraska or Iowa football, and we will have our guy be in charge of it. His name is Gary Barta.
Yeah. I mean, getting to the point here, though, where if you are a Nebraska fan or you're just a fan of any team and you're morally like, hey, we're on we're not taking any of the Saudi money, yet you're getting beaten 42-10 by the people who are taking the Saudi money.
What if Rule is seen in Abu Dhabi this weekend?
With normal.
Sergeant Holka's big toe. If this happens, Grand Canyon is going to run college sports. Already publicly traded. Major head start for any funding. Do a stock buyback for NIL. We do not want this.
Go Lopes. Yes.
I remember when they said, oh, we're not going to play Grand Canyon. They're a for-profit school.
Money.
All right. Brandon Vogel coming up here in a little bit. It appears that Nebraska basketball has an announcement about Mr. Iceland, Frederick Leo Curtis, the 7-footer who has been involved with Nebraska. They just tweeted out a little Icelandic chant. I think that's what it is. Or Thor is coming back.
That'd be great.
But Brandon Vogel is coming back next on 1620 The Zone. All right, we welcome in our good friend from counterread.com. Him and Aaron Sorensen do a fantastic job of Substack. You must be a subscriber to. That is a recommendation, and it is well with your wild. Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Hey, let's start here. We'll weave our way back to some specific Nebraska football talk. But yesterday, I think this flew under the radar that Clemson and Notre Dame agreed to a 12-year home-and-home series to have a huge rivalry that is locked in, a permanent rivalry for the next 12 years. Is this the start of something or just the start of a team that is an independent against a team that is at the top of the ACC and they need to find some leverage to make sure they don't get left at the table when the playoff expands?
Yeah, I think it was a smart move from Clemson's perspective specifically. Like there's upside here for Notre Dame. And we've had some great Notre Dame Clemson games recently, and the Irish have that history of kind of having these games locked in against certain opponents. But for Clemson, it offers a lot of flexibility. It offers another game that is kind of a resume point potentially. It shows they're out there trying to play the best, and I think it does give them a little bit of leverage for whatever comes next for college football. And we can feel reasonably confident, I think, that the Big Ten and the SEC are pretty well set, and the ACC's taken steps to do that. But it's still, a year ago, well, they probably still do today, Clemson and Florida State were doing everything they could to get out. So this feels like kind of, all right, we're not doing that. What's another step we can take to help ourselves?
Brandon, I feel like with this impending settlement, right, the question mark is NIL and how big of a factor is NIL going to play into the, already revenue that everybody's going to have to spend or be able to spend. Would you say that NIL and its involvement in the future of college sports is the difference between, and in particularly football, going from an MLB style type salary cap model to an NFL salary cap model? And what type of model do you think would be better for college football?
I mean, the simplest way is usually what I favor, and I guess maybe it's the football to football link. But if you could sign me up today for an NFL style salary cap, so you have a playing field that's close to level, well, really as level as it can be. That's where I would like to see it head. Is it going to get there? It's so hard to see that many steps down the road, because there's so many things that need to happen to get there. I mean, you would need some kind of agreement beyond just the conferences, which is all we really have right now. It behooves the Big Ten and the SEC to play together when they want to, but they don't do it all the time, and they're not interested in anybody else's kind of health or benefit. And that's just the way it has been in college football. And it's kind of like a big bang moment. Like, what's going to force teams to get to that point? And I honestly don't know.
So 3 years ago, this is kind of on the lines of this conversation, Ryan Day is in front of a group of Columbus business people, and he's saying it's going to take $13 million to maintain a championship roster. That was in 2022. Today, that would probably get you to the guaranteed rate bowl. But on the heels of that, Kirk Bohls tells us that Texas is going to spend between $35 and $40 million on their football roster in 2025. So I believe this will be the first time that a college football program will spend more on their players than they do their entire coaching staff, which includes a head coach's salary. How did we get to this point in such a short amount of time that Ryan Day, at a team that just won the national championship 3 years ago, is saying $13 million? Now Texas is saying we got $40 million to be competitive and to win a championship.
Yeah, it's a really good question. One of the things that has surprised me is players have been more willing to move than I thought they would. And I think we kind of thought, like, quarterbacks are always going to be in high demand, certain positions, but like, you see players from all over and kind of like all places on the depth chart being like, well, I got go in the market and see what people tell me. If I get a better opportunity, I'm going to jump. Like I was, I guess, maybe naive or maybe hopeful in thinking, how many people want to like switch schools and do all that? But it's happening all the time. So I think the supply has been higher than what I would have thought 3 years ago. TV money, if you're in the SEC and the Big Ten in particular, continues to go up, which I know isn't directly related to NIL. But when you look at stacking NIL on top of a revenue share, it's easier for teams to do that when they're making that much. And I think the other thing we're seeing, and Ohio State did this last year, is teams when they feel like their time is now, they can rally some additional money. Like, I mean, Texas hasn't had problems raising money, but it can even rally additional money on top of that to say like, hey, we've got the team to do it. Are you ready to go all in with us?
Brandon, Nebraska football spends money like they're at the big boy table, but they don't win enough games to be seated at the big boy table. And you look at teams like Illinois and Indiana where they are primed to win like teams that consider the big boy table, but they don't necessarily invest as much as those teams, right? When we get to the inflection point of like, because that's where we're headed to the Super League. We're going to head to 35, 40 teams, whatever number you want to say. When we get into that inflection point, what do you think the balance is going to be between importance of winning and importance of investing?
At Nebraska, I think it's going to always have to be importance of winning because while, they've always been very fiscally responsible and financially are among the healthier programs in the country, you're still talking about a smaller alumni base, drastically smaller than like a Texas or an Ohio State in terms of potential donors if we're still in that sort of NIL world and just a smaller state population wise. So while Nebraska has never cheaped out on anything, or at least not too much that I can remember when it comes to football. It's just they're not going to have as much money as Texas, like plain and simple. So I think for Nebraska, you need to be aware of that and plan for that and kind of look back to, its most successful era. Nebraska had really great players. It had a singular head coach in Tom Osborne, but like to the best we can try and figure it out in a pre-recruiting rankings era, like they weren't recruiting at a top 5 level every year, maybe not even top 10. It might've been like top 15. So they were always doing a little bit more than their baseline talent would tell you compared to the other teams at the top of the sport. Sure. And I think that's still true at Nebraska, despite all the changes in how you acquire players and how you can acquire players.
Hey, you've written about it plenty during spring and then just the other day about Nebraska getting to 9 wins and what that path looks like. Is there any scenario that a path to 9 doesn't include the natural leap of the quarterback?
No, I don't think so. Nebraska's got... I feel more certain about Dylan Raiola's ability to take those steps than I do in kind of the running back room as a whole. And I think they've brought in and have the pass catchers to help Raiola in that regard. But if he doesn't take that step, that doesn't help you much. And you'd have to be a real physical run-based team. And I think that's the less likely of the two options when you start talking about, trying to get to 9-3. So yeah, I mean, and I think that everyone knows that's kind of the state of the play, but they're going to need really good quarterback play. I think particularly what this offense will be to take that sort of step.
I know that looking at the schedule, that there are you could realistically see this team winning 8 games, this team maybe winning 9 games if the talent develops in the way that maybe we expect it to. But would you say that it's more likely that this team is actually a year away from being a 9-3, 10-2 contender?
It could be. I think particularly when I look at the youth on the defensive line, or maybe the inexperience is the better way to put it from a game snaps perspective, and maybe on the O-line, depending on how that shakes out. It could be, next season could be the year where Nebraska, and it would require a successful year this year to even get to that point, would be the year where, all of a sudden they're Texas Tech and saying like, hey, if there's a time to go in, it's a time to go in now. And to be honest, like, I don't know that I necessarily like that sort of future for college football, where you can tell when teams think they're going to be good because their NIL spending's up 40% from the year before. But for now, that's kind of the state of play. And I could foresee that being the case for Nebraska.
Who's the Indiana of 2025?
I think Nebraska has a shot to be that. There's not a. I mean, Illinois is almost expected to be, which makes me a little bit nervous for Illinois, even though they've got the pieces and they've got the quarterback. It's hard to. I think Purdue's going to be better than anybody thinks right now, but they're not gonna jump to the playoff. So this year's Indiana, the best candidate might be Indiana again, because I think they've done really well with what they did and probably upgraded at quarterback. So we'll see what the Hoosiers do.
Do you think that returning starters, because that's a big thing with Illinois, right? Hey, they're returning starters. They're returning 19 starters. But you look at Virginia Tech last season, they returned all these starters, and they were looked at as a college football playoff potential dark horse. And it turned out, well, they were returning starters from a 6-6 team, right? Would you say that maybe this whole returning starter stat can be looked at as a bit overrated?
I think it's changing, and it's been a while since I read it, but Bill Connolly of ESPN, always does his returning production rankings, which I use all the time as kind of a guideline. And last year's numbers, there used to be a really strong correlation between returning production and improvement. That can be improvement from 2-10 to 6-6, or 6-6 to 10-2. Last year, that correlation was a little bit weaker, if I'm remembering that correctly, which I think would make sense in a era of free and open transfers. You can address those things a little bit earlier. But I think if I were setting out and starting a football program, I would still feel better about those years where my returning production was high. Illinois has it. Cincinnati is another one. First game out of the gates, that is really high that Nebraska will face this year.
Hey, as I mentioned, and I hope everybody that is a subscriber to counterread.com enjoyed your Monday column on 3 - 1 times 3, because you've done this before, the path to 9. It's very fascinating. What is percolating now that we are deep into the off season, into the month of May at counterread.com?
Yeah, so for tomorrow, I'm going to look at those first 4 opponents, kind of a post-spring update. Cincinnati's pretty interesting to me. Not a whole lot out there on Houston Christian. Akron kind of got dealt a blow yesterday. It won't be bowl eligible in a pretty pivotal season for Joe Moorhead. And then you got the Michigan one. So it actually ended up being a little bit of a newsy week for the first 4 teams that Nebraska has. So we'll kind of go through and offer some updates on what we learned about those teams. And hey, let's see what it's going to take to go 4-0 to start those.
How do you get below a 930 in the academic standing? That's abysmal.
It's abysmal, and beyond that, it's really bleak for these MAC teams. I don't know what you do at one of those programs. They just get rated. I would
sue the NCAA. It works for everybody else. Might as well just throw. You can't restrict us from not playing and not being able to make our money by making us bowl ineligible because of school.
That's true. Everybody else is doing it.
Exactly.
No. Hey, appreciate it as always, the conversation and the backgrounds with our friendly birds in Tennessee. Have a great week.
Thanks, guys. Have a good
week. That's Brandon Vogel. You can follow him on Twitter at Brandon L. Vogel, of course, on counterread.com. Another year, no bowl appearance for Akron. They haven't been to a bowl game since 2017, and now they're not going, and people are sad. Well, there are 3 or 4 of them that go to actual Akron games.
They're in the college football playoff in my NCAA 25 dynasty, though. So we've actually created quite the dynasty.
Jerry Faust or Terry Bowden, the head coach?
No, it's Matthew James Fitzgerald is the head coach, and he's got a record of 212-63 the last time I checked.
All right, enjoy another night. The sports have been on fire. Will they deliver again with a host of NBA, NHL? And we'll find something else to talk about when we join you again tomorrow. Thanks for putting up with us on a Wednesday. For Jimmy, from Adam, Gary. Crossovers coming up next.